Good evening, everyone, and thanks for your patience. We're getting a little bit of a late start tonight. So again, thank you for your patience. If you would all join us, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance to start. Okay, thanks again for coming tonight, and welcome to the Novato Unified School District regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. And we are going to open up our our open session tonight by having our announcements of reportable action taken in closed session. Vice President Tom Cooper.
Thank you, President Nell. We met in closed session this evening regarding one item, item B, and we had a conference with labor negotiator Chris Koska, Assistant Superintendent Human Resources, Employees Organization, California School Employees Association, and item C we did not discuss. We gave direction to staff on item B.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, moving on to our agenda item 7A, which is approval of tonight's agenda. So I will look to the board to see if there are any comments or a motion to approve tonight's agenda. I have approval of the order of business. All right, I have a first by Trustee Milrick, seconded by Trustee Aguila. Are all those in favor of approving tonight's agenda? 6 in the affirmative and 1 absent. And at this point, I will go ahead and announce that Trustee Butler is away and will not be at tonight's meeting. So our next agenda item is public comment on our consent agenda. So if anyone has a comment regarding tonight's consent agenda, this would be the time to bring that forward. If you do have a comment for the consent agenda or our open session events, we have little blue slips of paper up there. If you could put your name on that and fill that out and bring it up to our clerk, Gladys, and she will see that we get your attention and an opportunity to speak when the item comes forward. So having no public comment brought forward on tonight's consent agenda, I will ask the board if they're interested in making a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, or if there are any items that they would like to pull and discuss. Trustee Aguila.
I'd like to pull item M.
Okay, item M.
M like Mary.
M like Mary. Thank you.
Okay. So if there aren't any other items that to be pulled, I'll ask the board if they're for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda without item M. So can I have that motion from Trustee Cooper, seconded by Trustee Scott? And all those in favor of tonight's consent agenda without item N? Trustee Aguila voting in the affirmative. That is 6-4 and 6 in the affirmative and 1 absent. Okay, at this time, item M, which was brought forward, is at the discretion of the entire board or whether or not they want to discuss this now or later on in the meeting. Trustee Aguila, would it be okay if we bring this up towards the end of the meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, after approving tonight's consent agenda, it's time for the good stuff and why we're all here, and that is for our student presentation. Linwood Elementary School is doing expected behaviors via GLAD and T-charts, and our principal, Andy Klein, will be presenting. So welcome, Andy.
Yes, testing. Yep, sounds like it. Okay, thanks for having us. So I'm going to speak very briefly because I'm going to invite up after me one of our third grade teachers, Lori Hewitt, who also doubles as our MCF, our Marin Community Foundation grant facilitator. We had a lot of different things we wanted to kind of compact into one. So Jim and I had a conversation yesterday about how do we bring coherence to and align all these different initiatives that we do, right? And get a lot of bang for your buck in multiple ways through one avenue. So here are the things we wanted to accomplish in what we brought to you today. We want to showcase that school-wide alignment of practices that make for great learning can be done in synergy rather than feeling overwhelmed by all the individual facets of the different ones that are out there. We wanted it to come from the kids to show student ownership of learning and school culture. We want it to be something that focuses upon this year's focal C of collaboration, both between our students and our school sites. We want it to be something new that we've added this year, and we wanted to focus upon our MCF grant progress and Linwood's faculty shared agreements. So all these things are condensed into one. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck tonight. So I'm going to invite up Lori Hewitt at this time to explain what it is you get to see.
So it looks like we're watching a Rancho slide deck instead of a Linwood slide deck? That's the website. Oh, okay.
Hi. As Andy introduced me, I'm Lori Hewitt. I'm a third grade teacher at Linwood, as well as the facilitator for the P3 grant. And something I just want to mention about the grant is that it has 6 elements, which are we have our shared vision, our school culture, high quality teaching and learning. We have instructional alignment, family engagement, and extended learning opportunities. And so each school involved in the grant, they continue to improve and build upon their best practices in these elements. And a way that we also align pre-K through 3 work is through our cross-district learning walks. And it was actually at a cross-district learning walk that we learned about this activity that you're going to see from our students. And it was at Hamilton School. And so what we did at Linwood is we modified the idea to encompass 4 components. So we have our grades K through 5th alignment piece, where teachers are cohesively teaching the T-charts, which is a GLAD strategy. At the beginning of the year, showing expected behavior and having the students think of the expected behavior for the area around Linwood. So, for example, the playground, the hallways, office, the computer lab. And so that's one component. Another component is really giving the students an opportunity to work collaboratively. And as Andy said, the focus out of our 6 C's is collaboration. So first thing, beginning of the school year, students are already having opportunities for collaboration. Also coming together as a community and seeing all the T-charts in the multipurpose room as a gallery walk and going through it as classes, the students, the teachers, and even classified staff went through and looked at all the T-charts and were able to see the alignment there. And lastly, posters will be picked to put up around the campus for the whole school year. And teachers will be able to refer to these posters to see what's expected and continue to see these T-charts. So those are the 4 components of this activity. So K-5 teachers had to choose at their grade level 3 T-charts to do in their class. Some of the classes did whole group, and some of the classes did the collaborative groups. The upper grades tended to do more of the collaborative groups at the beginning of the year. And what they did is they got together and did the T-charts, and they picked a certain expected behavior and put what it looks like and what it sounds like in student language. And one thing also that it focuses on is what you should be doing as opposed to what you're not doing. So the positive, what it looks like and what it sounds like. And so I want to explain just an example lesson that was done in a 4th grade classroom. And what that teacher did is she had the students go into 3 different groups, and they got a piece of binder paper for their group. They wrote down an example T-chart of what it looks like and sounds like, and then they passed that binder paper around to all the other groups, so everyone had the opportunity to put what they thought was, what it looks like and sounds like for that expected behavior. And so they got to comment on all 3 topics. Then that original group took the binder paper with the suggestions and their own comments and created a poster. And that represented their expected behavior. They were able to use magazine pictures or draw pictures to depict what the looks like and sound like was on the chart. So that's an example in the 4th grade classroom, one activity that I wanted to mention. And then here are just some things that some of the Linwood teachers said, and that's students generated expected behaviors, and being able to do that created student voice and choice. Students had ownership of that expected behavior because they were the ones creating it. Students, and this was a fourth grade classroom, students were able to really focus on how they can word the do's instead of the don'ts. Because sometimes, automatically they just say, don't do this, don't do that. So there were a lot of great discussions about the do's instead of the don'ts. In the upper grades, the teachers really felt that the students had a comprehensive grasp of those expected behaviors, having been there for years and years. And the last thing that I'm going to leave you with is that it was really great to see, and this was from quite a few teachers saying it was really great to see all of the charts in the multipurpose room and really see the common trends in the T-charts and being able to have that gallery walk experience. And so I'm going to end with that, and thank you very much. I'm glad I was able to share that with you.
So the next person I'll invite up is Sierra Cubley de Bruin. She's one of our bilingual kindergarten instructional assistants, as well as a member of our yard supervision team. And so one of the things we really pride ourselves on is if we're going to do something that really makes a difference culturally at a school, it cannot be just in a faculty meeting. It needs to be encompassing all of our team. So our yard supervision team had a chance to do this as well. And Sierra is going to share a little of her experience.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sierra, and like he's already introduced me, I work with kindergartners, and we have a monthly meeting, just like everybody else, with our classified staff and yard supervision team, and we went on a great self-guided walking tour, just like the students did, of the great T-charts that our kids had made. And I think everyone who's ever worked in education knows that collaboration is invaluable. If you don't have people on the same page, things just aren't going to work. So this was just a fabulous opportunity to really get a better idea of what our students expect from themselves and really cross-reference our priorities and our expectations for them with their own. And it also was a great help in being able to collaborate with the rest of the team. We have 3 different yards at Linwood, and so sometimes it can be hard for all of the different yard teams to stay on the same page, so the expectations stay very consistent through kindergarten, the 1 through 3 yard, and the 4-5 yard. So in this way, we were able to pick out posters that not only were visually popping and really attractive to the eye and that were definitely student generated because those things that we prioritized, but also that reflected consistency in rules and expectations throughout the grade levels. So I think that the charts that you're going to see tonight from the kids, I'm going to keep this super brief because I want to get to the cute, awesome presentations that they'll be giving. I think that you're going to be really impressed with what you see in regard to originality and especially positivity, because one of the most valuable elements of this T-chart exercise that I saw was the emphasis, like Lori said, about focusing on what you do want to expect and the positive instead of just what not to do. It can get really daunting for a kid to say no running, no shouting over and over again. But when they can see a good example of what is expected of them and what they can give back to their school, I think it really helps motivate them to want to follow the rules, as we'll say.
Okay. Thank you, Sierra. So I'm going to introduce each student as they come forward to share with you one of our posters. Some of them, it happens to be the poster that their classroom made. Others, it is not. But they have a little bit that they want to share with you. A few of them had their own reflections about what their experience was like going through the process. And then others just want to share with you some of the looks like, sounds like, expectations that really jumped out to them from that poster. So the first person to share is Dulce Camacho. Come on up, Dulce. And I'll hold up this for you. You get to be right there by the microphone.
What I enjoyed about the project is that you get to focus on the details that you think are important. I have the lunchtime poster. One thing that we should hear is quiet hand and feet. One thing that we should see is students taking one set of silverware.
All right, thank you. Our next presenter is Randy Rohel. Come on up, Randy.
It's nice when we get to work with other people. People are also better following rules because of the posters. I have the poster about bathroom behavior. One thing that you should see paper towels in the trash. One thing you should hear is quiet voices.
Thank you, Rena. Our next student is Allison Aragin. How's that?
This poster is about playground rules. One thing that we should see is kids going down the slides. One thing that we should hear is saying yes if someone asks to play.
Our next student is Adrian Garcia.
My poster is about assembly behavior. One thing that we should see is people sitting crisscross. One thing that we should hear is only one person speaking.
Our next student is Imtishal Zubair.
I thought the project was helpful because kids gotta be the ones to write down the rules. My poster is about dismissal time. One thing that we should see is students waiting their turn to get their backpacks. One thing that we should hear is, don't forget your coat.
Mom's like, yeah, I hear that one.
Brandon Gomez is our next speaker.
This poster is about highway behavior. One thing that should be seen is kids walking outside the yellow semicircle. One thing that should be heard is the wind.
So it's fun to see the kids putting their own touch in it, right? I mean, that yellow semicircle, you don't want to get whacked by the door, right? So, but also the wind, because they know, like, we shouldn't hear kids talking during that time. So they said, what do we actually hear? And our final student is Anna Di Gregorio.
I think this is fun because I got to talk with one of my friends about it. My class made a poster about the office. One thing that we see is people talking on the phone, waiting their turn. One thing that we hear is the faucet running for kids with hiccups.
At a little more standard height. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Okay, that was terrific. Thank you very much for bringing us your T-charts. Next on our agenda is to, number 11 is the announcements by the board superintendent and our student board members. And tonight we have 2 student board members. And if you guys would, before you give us your announcements, just let everyone know who you are and what school you go to and your role there. So, Paige, are you ready? Okay.
Hi, my name is Paige Spear, and I am the representative for Novato High. This week at Novato, we have our first Student Advisory Committee meeting, which is tomorrow after school. At Novato High, we want to hear the students' voice and choice. So we have created a captain circle, which is where the captain of each athletic group meets up with the other captains, and they just talk about all the new sporting events and cool ideas for all the events. And then we have the Student Advisory Committee, which is when a group of selected students all meet up together and we discuss things like the dress code. And then we have the Marin School of the Arts Student Council, where representatives from Marin School of the Arts all meet up together and they also discuss things that should be changed or things that should be improved. We also this year have our first year of journalism. They're going to print very soon, and some of the articles that are going to be in the journal involve our gender-neutral bathrooms that are being installed and the controversy about that, the controversy about the dress code, and the new parking lot. All of the voice and choice committees are good communication for the faculty and the students. This year we're starting off strong with our Future Health Career Project at Novato, and we're meeting up with College of Marin. We're teaming up with them. Mr. Baldwin is going to talk about later the Nobel Initiative. We had our Student Psych Council working on planning for student achievement, talking about equity, and increasing the percent of students as seniors meeting the A through G requirements. In the past couple of weeks, we have had back to school night, which was a success. We had a student versus staff volleyball game at lunch, which we had a bunch of attendance. Nominating homecoming court this week is coming up. I'm pretty sure the staff did. It was impressive.
Memory's fading, I can see.
The floats are being made for the homecoming, for the classes, and we're trying to get special groups involved with the homecoming. And we're also inviting local businesses to advertise in our parade this year and donate to Novato High. And on Thursday, we have college night where students and parents can come in and talk about college information. It's mainly for juniors and seniors, but freshmen and sophomores are also very welcome. And we received our CAS scores for Novato High, and we scored an 83% in English language arts, which is in the met/exceeded standards category, and we had the highest scores in the county and the second highest scores in the Bay Area. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I go to Marin Oaks. So Nova is currently accepting applications and has 47 students enrolled. Marin Oaks will be concluding first quarter on October 14th and enrolling new students on Monday, October 17th. Hill has a brand new program that was officially implemented this school year called Bridges. 21 students from mostly Marin Oaks and a couple from Nova applied to join the program. Students will take a College of Marin course twice a week at the Hill site, but taught by a comm instructor beginning October 18th. All Bridges students are required to complete a course called Work It Out, and that is taught by Marin Employment Connection instructor Dan Daniels. Once students have completed both courses, they are placed into an internship in their field of choice and will take at least one comm class at the IVC campus. The goal of the Bridges program is to help students be prepared for college and experience and earn transferable units to a four-year college or earn a certificate and a vacation of their choice. The Bridges coordinator is the liaison between Hill students and comm staff, and she will help keep students on track. This summer, 2 Marin Oaks seniors were recognized for their excellence. Elena Margarito Castro and Presley O'Keefe volunteered during the summer with the Marin County Office of Education School to Career Program. Both students were recognized at the Civic Center by the Career Youth Explorer Program for excellence in volunteering. Last Friday, we had our first team building day of the school year. Team Building Day is an event put together by our leadership class where students are placed in groups and have to work together to complete several challenges. It's always a fun event that helps bring our student body together. Marin Oaks has been selected to move into the second phase of becoming a model continuation school. A team from the state will come to visit our school in October, and they will determine if Marin Oaks can be a model continuation school for the state of California. Next Thursday, September 29th, Marino students and a few staff will be going ziplining in Occidental at Sonoma Canopy Tours. Students who increased their MAP scores or met or exceeded the standard of the CASP test were invited to attend. Today we had Ambassadors of Hope and Opportunity come to Hill to give a presentation and share resources available for homeless youth. In early September, we had a drug awareness assembly where speakers from AA, Al-Anon, and North Bay Security Group shared stories about the impact drugs and alcohol can have on not only an individual but a family.
Thank you. Trustee Milrick.
I'd like to thank Stephanie for highlighting the College of Marin's work at Marin Oaks. Last 2 weeks ago, there was the first class at Novato High for the entrepreneurial program. It meets from 3 to 6 every Wednesday. It's offered by the College of Marin in their new career technical education program. It's offered on Novato High. And I think there's an opportunity for San Marin kids, if they could get over there and enroll in it as well. There's some available slots in the program. And I met the 2 instructors, and it looks like it's going to be a great program, a great addition to our partnership with the College of Marin and the offerings on the Novato High School campus, which I think also includes Mandarin from the college, I believe.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So, thank you.
Trustee Aguila.
Yes, I have been able to attend some of the back-to-school nights. Somehow I switched adult ed with Loma Verde on one day, then Nexus. I have to say with Loma Verde had a great attendance. Nexus had very low attendance from parents, and just wanted to remind everybody that, you know, a successful school would start with parent participation, or better yet, parent engagement. So that equals that's a great formula for a successful school. So leading for the equity, I stopped by, and it was packed. Teachers and principals were there and attended Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Some of the principals were there on 4 or 5 hours sleep. And so I just want to thank the teachers and principals that took the time for that. And I also like to thank Jim for taking time off to meet with individual trustees, and thank you for meeting with me this week.
All right, thank you, Trustee. Trustee Mack.
First off, I'd like to apologize for not being here all the time, sometimes disembodied, but glad we can make it work. Really only one thing. I did go to the Novato High open house, and really was impressed by the new teachers we're bringing in. Just with a lot of the work we've had to do to scramble to get teachers, and we've done well. So I was pretty impressed with a lot of the new teachers, and I'm really happy about it. And not speaking just as a trustee, but as a parent with my kid in some of these classrooms. So it's good stuff. Thank you.
Trustee Scott.
I was also able to attend the Leading for Equity. It was a 3-day workshop that I think several trustees and many of our principals and teachers and school partners attended. I think it's going to be incredible for our district. I thought it was very well done, very well presented, and I was happy to see the participation. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Cooper.
I don't have any comments.
All right. I just want to take a moment to remind everybody that the Marin Junior ROTC program at Novato High School is celebrating its 50th year anniversary. And they're going to have a Stars and Stripes Vets and Cadets Gala on October 15th, and that's 5:30 to 9:30. And their guest and honoree of the evening is former astronaut Dr. Yvonne Cagle. So it's promised to be a good event, and just wanted to get that out there. And you can find out more, I'm sure, on the school website, as well as doing a search for the Junior ROTC at Novato High. And Superintendent Hogum.
Thank you, President Nell. So first, I'd like to welcome our student trustees. We appreciate having you guys here and appreciate your input and ideas and student voice. So thanks for taking your time. Couple things. We had our district leadership team meeting last week, and one of our central focus in the district is on our graduate profile and the 6 C's, which are critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, and we're really focusing on collaboration this year. And the district leadership team is mostly teachers and principals and administrators from all of our schools, and they met to go over rubrics that we're looking at. So teachers agreed that we can't do all the 6 C's, but we can try to focus on those 3. So they did a lot of work around how we're going to assess those skills. So collaboration is what we're starting with, and we got pretty far along on that one. The district advisory committee is going to kick in a couple weeks on October 3rd, and they'll look at the other 3 C's, which are cultural competence, character, and conscientious learner. And they'll be probably starting with equity and what that means, and again, cultural competence, and how do we know that we're teaching that? How do students demonstrate that they're learning that? So I look forward to the district advisory committee coming in, and both of those committees helping us move our graduate profile forward. A couple student acknowledgements. We have a couple students that are here tonight from our middle schools, from San Jose and Sinaloa, and their principals. So thanks for being here tonight. The first person I would like to acknowledge is Alexander Marias. Alexander, do you want to stand up and come on up here, please? So Alexander is really being honored for his integrity and his honesty, and he found an object that a teacher had, which was a phone, and he brought it in, and I think that character is a really important value, obviously. That's one of our 6 C's. And there's not a lot of kids these days, I think, who are as honest as we would like and have that integrity. So, Alexander, I want to thank you for turning that item in and being a model for character. I'll also wish you a happy birthday on Thursday, and we really are proud of all that you've done. So we'll have a certificate for you and a gift card. So thanks so much. Got it?
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday. So the second student is from Sinaloa, and that is Izagani Aquino, who's an 8th grade student. He had a busy summer after qualifying at the Northern California History B Regional Championships in San Jose. He then placed in the top half of his division at the National History B in Chicago. This qualified him to compete in the International History Olympia held at the University of Hawaii last summer. Nice. I think we need to, don't you need some adult chaperones on that as well? At the International History Olympiad, Izagani competed with a group of 7 other middle school students from around California. Team California brought home 14 medals, with Izagani taking first place for pop music history. Nice job. The National History Bee is a social studies competition for students who love learning, competing, and having fun. The International History Olympiad is a highly competitive academic event that brings together the most elite history students from around the world for a week of competitions and learning. Izagani is a brilliant young man who is extremely kind and creative, yet humble, and has always had a passionate interest in history. He said, "History is great. It's like a storybook that never ends, and you can be a part of it." He enjoyed the overall experience, but especially loved meeting students from around the world. I'm sure Hawaii wasn't too bad. Already looking ahead to 2 years from now, he hopes to qualify for the next International Olympiad in Berlin. So Izagani, congratulations and great job.
Hi everyone. I qualified for the International History Olympiad through the Sinaloa intramural competition. We had an in-school multiple choice test with many very hard questions, and I was fortunate enough to place in the top half in school for that. So I was able to qualify for the regional competition through that. the History Bee is really interesting because it is a buzzer-based competition, very much like Jeopardy, but you don't know what you're walking into, so they give you random questions and you just dig it out from what you know. It was a great experience because I was able to meet, people from around the country and around the world who share my interest, and it's really interesting to see the people that will be leading our world tomorrow. And I also took it very personally because since I was representing Team California and Marin County as a whole, I want to use what I learned in school, as Ms. Hewitt was talking about earlier, to kind of show what we're about. So it was a pretty awesome experience, and I hope that everyone could do it because it's pretty cool. So thank you.
Well, congratulations again to both our honorees tonight. And unfortunately, we have to move on. So our next agenda item is 12, non-agenda public comment. This would be an opportunity for anyone here who would like to comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda. And if you wanted to do that, you would fill out a form and step forward. And if there's anyone interested, if not, then we will go ahead and move on to our first staff report of the evening. And that's going to be item 13A, student achievement results. And Yvonne Charez, our Assistant Superintendent of Education Services, will be presenting.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Mr. President and Board of Trustees, for this opportunity. Let me just kind of get all settled in here with my paperwork. So one thing is, data is very interesting. You can look at data 100 different ways, and it's kind of funny is I actually had a PowerPoint with about 57 slides. And the thing is that there's so much data out there that you kind of want to look at everything, and to do it would take an hour or two, and I don't think our audience but we can always share with that as we go throughout the year. But so today I narrowed it down to about 15 slides, so huge improvement. But there will be many questions, I'm sure, where you're going to wonder where the data is at. And we can always put the 60-slide PowerPoint for the public or however. So let's begin. I just want to say that I've been in 2 other districts, and overall, I'm very impressed with the data, with the scores here. And it takes a big commitment. It starts with the board, with the goals that you have set, with the leadership, the superintendent, the cabinet, and our principals, our teachers, classified staff, because it really takes a whole team to make this happen. This doesn't happen by accident or by chance. A lot of what I call, not hard work, but I call heart work needs to go into this to make our students, the results go up. You have the PowerPoint in front of you, and let's see. Okay, it helps. All right, helps to turn it on. So the assessment is very different, as you know, from the California State Standards Test, the CSTs from 2 years ago. This test is one that actually measures what our students really know and what they can prove. One thing is, if you want to go deeper and look into data, there's the website right there. So this is the website where you can go and look for any type of data, however you want, in any subgroups, from any county, any school, you name it, it's there at that link for you to go look at the results from this, what they call a Smarter Ballot Assessment test. So this year is our second year of testing. Last year was our first year. The students that are assessed are in grades 3 through 8, and in high school only grade 11. It's based on the California Common Core state standards. The Common Core, or the SBAC, is something that many states in the United States adopted. California calls it California Common Core because California chose to add about 15% more standards, just for fun, you know. Why not? 15% more standards than the other states. It's a computer-based and adaptive exam, and it requires our students to really think critically, write, and explain. So I'm very happy with the 6 C's because that's what we're asking our students to do with project-based learning, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, etc. There's 4 levels. The old test used to have the 5 levels. There's now 4 levels. Tonight, what I'm gonna focus on is standard met and standard exceeded. Before it was proficient and above. That was the old language. So the results for 2 years in a row, our district, NUSD, has performed well above the state average in every grade in both English language, arts, literacy, and mathematics. And this is a great work to our teaching staff, to everybody, for our students, our parents, our community should be very proud of the work that our students are doing. The tables that I'm going to include is for the percentage of all students who met or exceeded the standards, and it's comparing 2015, 2016. So what we have here is, it was a struggle trying to decide how to present all this data. So I kind of said, what's the easiest way to show the data? So what we have there is Novato Unified, the state, Marin County, and then I added, in this case, the elementary schools. So what you see here is for all students in English language arts. You see our district made growth, a 4% growth, which is great to see. The state, you see there, made a 5%, Marin County, 2% growth. And then our sites as well, which I'm not gonna go over in too much detail. But I do wanna highlight that the growth, 2% or more growth is what the state's looking for annually, 2% or more. And it was nice to see that we got 4%, which is 2% higher than what the state is expecting. For math, again, 2% growth for our district, from 49 to 51 for elementary. You see the state there, again, we're above. And then you see Marin County, and then our other elementary schools. So you can see that some of our schools are doing better than the county, Marin County, and some are not. And you can also, our demographics, etc. For secondary schools, English language arts, our district grew 4%. So 60% of our students are met standard or exceeded on the state standard. The state's 49, Marin County 67. And again, you see our middle schools and high schools there. And the high schools at Novato High, you see an 8% growth. San Marin, 5% growth. Sinaloa, 6%. So you're seeing growth there in our students. And that's what we want, is we want growth. We want to see, that's why we come to work every day, is to get our kids learning and growing. For math, district-wide, a 2% growth for our secondary schools. You see growth again. Sinaloa, 6%, San Jose, 6%, and San Marin, 9% growth, nice. So again, you see the growth, and that's what we want. Next year, we want to grow again by 2% or more. But we do have our achievement gap that exists. It's been with us for many years. It continues to be with us. And that's, again, where our LCAP is really, the dollars that support the LCAP through supplemental funds is really working to work with our economic disadvantage, with our English learner and our foster youth as well. And I do have another slide where I'll show you a little bit of what we're doing with our English learners, as well as our other students. Math, again, you see the achievement gap. A little less than ELA, but it's still a gap there. And That's the red is it's a big concern for us and all 999 districts in the state that have that, that also have this gap. So what are we doing? So I just want to let the board and the committee know, why is it that we have this red? So first of all, we're asking our English learners to be proficient in an exam where they're still learning English, right? So it's kind of like, you're an English learner, we want you to be proficient in this language. If I was a state, I would focus it on our redesignated students and see how they're doing it. It would be a better shot, more accurate, to see if our students are growing in English. In Novato, we have 1,252 English learners. From that 1,252, 660 were tested. So out of that, the English learner line you see there, that represents 660 students. From that 660 students, 146 are newcomers, which means they've been in the United States for 3 years or less. Again, going back to our English learners, 660 are English learners, 146 are newcomers, 3 years or less. So what are we doing? Because we can't just hope that they're learning. We got to be really focused. And that's part of our district plan for student achievement. Our school sites have the site plans for student achievement. And part of it is, what are the strategies and what are the action steps and the resources that we're using? And again, many of these are funded through the supplemental fund, through LCAP. You see that our EL coordinator is in her second year. She's really working hard to develop systems and coherence. We have a new ELD instructional coach this year. A newcomer counselor that was recently hired to focus on our newcomers. We've been working on some instructional strategies with Clark Consulting. Summer is a big program. The last board meeting I presented the program, the EL Academy. And then we have some implementations district-wide, specifically focusing on designated and integrated ELD, which means that designated means that every English learner will get 30 to 45 minutes of designated ELD. Plus, it's also integrated because our EL students are not just EL students for 30 to 45 minutes a day. They're ELs all the time. So how are we integrating those strategies when we're doing science, math, etc.? As we're doing project-based learning, it's very important that we scaffold for our students who are English learners, also for the students that need accommodations and modifications, so that they can all be engaged in project-based learning. After school is a very important time, and the state this year just adopted a new framework. The nice thing about the state, and I don't say too many nice things about the state, but one thing they did well this year is that they actually integrated the ELA and the ELD standards together. Before, it was this is the ELA standards, and these are the ELD standards, and they were separate. But now, they're one, which is awesome, and so they got it right. So now it's really all integrated in the framework. And we're continuing to see how we can support our newcomers academically, but also social, emotional, the wellness. So I just wanted to, again, put a little perspective on the achievement gaps so that you can get a better picture. So again, a little bit just to kind of wrap this up here. Data analysis, continues to be a large discrepancy between our student groups. We need to continue to focus and identify best practices and effective strategies to serve our student groups within the LCAP, as well as the district plan for student achievement, and our school site plans. And in October, I believe the 4th, in October board meetings, our principals will be coming up to present their site plans for student achievement. And in those site plans, our schools each have identified their high leverage, or what Jim likes to call trim tabs, the trim tabs that are going to get them to continue to make growth around the board goals of equity, student success, staff success, and community engagement. So that's going to be a way that we continue to move forward and transform lives of all our students. All right. Questions, comments? There was a lot of information. Again, we went from 50-something slides to 15.
Okay, questions from the board. We had Trustee Aguila first, then Trustee Milrick. and Mac, and everyone's got a question.
Yes, I figured, yeah.
Trustee Aguila.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you for this information. I know you did your best to condense, and it's not always easy. I can't address which page I'm going to ask you from because the pages are not numbered, but it's the one with all students for math. And I'm worried about, I believe it's elementary achievement levels, all students for math. And I'm a bit worried, I'm surprised. Well, we know that we still have a lot of work to do with the math. I'm very happy to know that we're doing well in other areas. But with the math, it's all students, and I'm wondering, it's not a language barrier. So we can't say that because they don't speak English that they're not doing well in math. I believe the numbers are the same everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so we need to just not give them that excuse and keep the bar up. So my question to you would be, what do you think? How do you think that we can do better?
Well, it's going to take a lot of work from all of us here, and I mean all of us, to really increase that. And it's going to be using our instructional coaches to really support the teachers within the classroom. It's really, it's going to be multiple measures, multiple strategies, looking at data, using our formative assessments. We use MAP through Northwest, NWEA exams through MAP, and we do those 3 times a year. So really using those formative assessments to kind of check in and see if our students are making growth based on that measurement of academic performance exam. Then using the results in our professional learning communities to really look at our students and then say, what can we do differently and what do we need to do more or less of? So that's one. And then also looking at some best practices, having our teachers do some learning walks and seeing, because there's some teachers that have some great results. There's some grade levels that are doing awesome, and we can also visit those classrooms as well. But it's you can't just one; it's multiple things, and it takes many of us.
Yeah, thank you. And you're doing all that.
Yes, Jim wants me to mention Cali. Cali is right now we're focusing that with our secondary schools. We actually have a team about 8 or 10 of some administrators and math teachers working with other districts focused on math practices, inquiry-based learning, and exactly what you said. So they're going to be coming back tomorrow. They've been gone since Saturday or Sunday, and I've been following them on Twitter. They've been tweeting, so it's pretty cool to use social media to see what they're doing. And they're going to be bringing back, identifying the five or so strategies to do that are going to be high leverage, and it's a partnership through Stanford University.
Okay, Trustee Miller, and then Trustee.
Couple of points. I didn't get a copy of the handout, so I followed along just fine on the screen. Can you get a copy of the handout, and also to the student trustees wherever you're talking about it, but we don't have the hard copy to review. So that'd be great. Thanks. And I didn't see it attached to the agenda. I was trying to follow it there, so whatever. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the second is, I was noticing, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The second is thanks. The second is the achievement at Novato High School. If I got it right watching the slides, they did really well in English language arts. Is that, and if we could bring up that slide, is that it,
83%.
Cool. With an 8% bump, so that looks amazing, actually. So that's, and you said the best in the county or second best in the county?
Best in the county. Best in the county and second best in the
Loud
Bay
and
Area.
proud. Yes, good.
And Paige is right. Good homework. Good job. I'm impressed.
You can thank Mr. Baldwin.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, right. Careful. We have to live with this guy. So just the other side of that coin, let's look at the math scores for Novato High. So is that, so Novato High is at 53% and San Marin's at 42%. Is that, and San Marin's growing and Novato High's flat. So, okay, so we have more of an opportunity to do well here, but we did really great on the language arts. Thanks.
Yes.
I just wanted to.
You're
make sure
welcome.
I read it correctly. Thanks.
Okay. Trustee Mack and then Trustee Scott.
Hi, Yvonne. It's good to work with you.
Yes, nice to see you live.
Here,
Yeah.
for real. I'm a numbers guy, so I kind of tend to dig into these things. So first off, if we go back to that elementary math, the one, yeah. So obviously, we do have some issues, it looks like, with some either sideways or a little negative, but we do have one outlier there. Any thoughts on at least what happened with that outlier? Maybe looking at cohorts to see if the cohorts dropped, or is there a new population that came in, or don't know yet, but that would be helpful to know.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And so Loma Verde will be presenting here in October
Okay.
with some of their data and action. And so you mentioned cohorts, and actually that's the better way to look at data.
Yeah,
The way we're looking at it is
right.
is not the best way, but it's the way that the newspapers and the media looks at it,
Right.
or the easiest way. But you really want to look at, for example, last year's third graders, right, and compare them to now in fourth grade,
Exactly.
right? But normally the media and newspaper does third grade to third grade, which is two very different cohorts.
I would welcome
Yeah.
whatever you can do in
Yeah.
cohort, because I think you're right. That gives us an apples to apples,
Exactly.
true progress.
Yes.
Then one thing, when we get into the bar charts with the gap on it, which I think is a wonderful illustration of what we're trying to achieve, and thank you, because it helps really visualize. Look at that red, folks, that's what we're trying to work on. What would be helpful, though, and this is just more me with numbers, if you could show the size of each of those rows, so the number of students in each row, because it gives us a sense for that English learners group. Well, we know that's 660, right? But the economically disadvantaged, what's that? Hispanic or Latino, what's that? And there's probably overlap, of course. It's not like they're all additive, but it just helps us understand not only the size of the gap, but the breadth of it and how impactful it is.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. Yes, thank you.
Helpful. And then last thing about what Ross noticed about the two high schools, maybe something to think about. I can't help but think on the English side, that's MSA, driving communication scores up, or English language arts. And then on the math side, that's STEM, that's San Marin. But that's just a quick thought that I'd throw out there.
Nice.
That's it. Thanks.
Sure. All right. Trustee Scott.
Well, my fellow board members here already asked the questions I was going to ask, but what I would like is, could you send the 60-page
Yes.
slide that you have? I'd be interested in poring over that myself in a little more detail. Since you've already done the work,
Yes,
I'd really
thank
like
you.
to see
Yeah,
it. So if you could email it to me, I would enjoy
All right.
going over the numbers a little more.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
Sounds
a numbers
great,
person
yeah,
myself,
no.
so I would like to see that.
okay. No, thank you. So the work did not go, all right, no, yes. All right.
That's probably a good idea to send it to all of us. So.
I will,
Yeah, he'll do it.
All right. Good. Okay. That it? Any more questions? Okay. All right. Trustee Cooper.
Hi, Yvonne. Thanks very much.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. With respect to the slide that says, this one says English language learners in the upper right corner. So getting back to, my question goes back to the slide, the elementary slide, Loma Verde, and the significant drop-off, and Trustee Mack alluded to that. I'm just curious, what of these current and new resources are directed towards that whatever that issue, whatever's going on there, what are we really specifically doing for that?
so for them, we are doing everything except the newcomer counselor. So everything up there, and then on top of it, they're part of the P3 MCF Marin Community Foundation grant, which also on top of what we're doing, they also have more that they're doing around data. So they have data teams. They have the learning walks that they do. And I haven't had a chance to speak with the principal yet, just regarding this and seeing what she has to say. But
Yeah, you
I will
never
do,
know.
But I will do
Task
so.
force.
You know, one thing that we did notice is In fourth grade, there was a small dip, and we actually looked to see how many new fourth grade teachers there were, and there were 4 brand new fourth grade teachers. And then we said, was that just a coincidence? So then we went look further into the MAP scores, and the new teachers also had lower scores there than the veteran teachers. So we had 2 different tests where new teachers had lower scores.
Good deduction.
Yeah, so we,
You have to be a detective.
Yes.
And then my final question was, of all these resources on this slide that we're looking at, how do you allocate between the various schools? So that's limited resources there. How do you differentiate, spread that around?
So right now, the way it works is, what I'm looking up there is, we're pretty much, everyone's getting the same attention. The high schools, the secondary schools are getting a little bit more with the Clark Consulting, English Language Development, and also with the designated. It's just we wanted to start at the high school level and at the middle school level with ELD, since that's where our biggest need was with data. And also part of the LCAP, or the supplemental fund, I believe it's funded through this amount of students. So if a school has 40 English learners, there's a formula to fund. Am I correct, Karen? For the supplemental funding, there's a formula to be equitable for all the school sites based on their unduplicated
Based
counts.
on population.
Population.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I had a couple of questions, and it's same basic page, but I wanted to know a little bit more about designated and integrated. And you mentioned integrated was throughout the day, I guess, but these are ELD rollouts that you're specific. So are there designated and then there's integrated?
Yeah.
So is that I need help trying to understand if that's the same students, is that the same people, is the one, help me understand that. And then also you talked about how ELA and ELD, the state put it together, and I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about it. Are we going to end up with a single category, you think, there, or what were the benefits of that?
All right. So designated, what we mean by designated, it's that it's a standalone 30 to 45 minutes of just intense English language development for 30 to 45 minutes every day within the BAL schedule. The other students will then go do some type of universal access or some other curriculum or enrichment, while the teacher's really focusing for 30 to 45 minutes on high academic language. And then, so that's designated. Integrated is, so for example, you saw Linwood, one of the teachers spoke about GLAD, Guided Language Acquisition Design, and she said the T-chart. So that's part of integrated. So what you do is GLAD has about 50 strategies. Out of those 50, you do those throughout the entire day, and you integrate them within math, science, PB, whatever you're doing, you integrate all these strategies. At our secondary schools, they use SIOP, which is a Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, and those also have integrated strategies for core content. And so, and again, that goes because our kids, and the strategies are good for all students, regardless if they're English learners or not. They're good strategies for all, and that's integrated throughout the entire day. For the ELA, ELD state framework, those are, what they did is ELA has a certain set of standards, and then ELD has also standards. But what they did is they merged the standards so that they're aligned. Before they were separated, but so now third grade ELA standard, let's say 1.2, and then ELD standard for that designated time is now combined with the English language arts. Before they were real separate. But now if you look at the book, you're going to see the ELA and the ELD standard together.
Okay, I'd be interested in seeing more of that. Maybe we could pass that on in one way or another in the coming weeks. So appreciate that. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, questions on? That's good. All right, then.
And again, I just want to say the scores. I'm really impressed coming from 2 different districts and seeing these scores just and our students. yeah, they're working hard, and our teachers are too. So congratulations to them all.
If I could just add one thing, if we could do whatever we can to publicize that 83%, let's do it.
All right.
That's good publicity.
All right, thanks, Juan. So,
You think a video of Matt or a video of Paige?
all right, so we're going to move on to item B. Again, Yvonne is going to give us the 2016-17 professional development.
All right, so this, again, was trying to synthesize what you have in front of you and what's also attached to the agenda, which I'm sure the public can see is this document that's about 5 pages. And what this is, it's like a football coach, right? He has his plays behind his pocket and his game book. So this is our game book. It tells us for the year what we're going to be doing specifically around project-based learning and equity, all integrated. So not designated, but all integrated together to support our teachers and staff. So the goal that the board has around district staff success, all staff will receive the appropriate support and resources in order to create the conditions to ensure student success. What we did is we said, how can we really focus or get those trim tabs and really focus on project-based learning and integrate everything that we do within project-based learning with an equity eye, right, with that equity lens to ensure equitable access and opportunities for all of our students. The district goal, which is a SMART goal here, is that all teachers will implement at least one PBL-related project in their classroom. We've began this, it was over at San Marin High School before school started, and we had all of our teachers at San Marin engaged in being a learner around project-based learning, but also seeing how we use the graduate profile and the 6 C's all integrated within PBL. So we really want to be very strategic around integrating everything that we do for when we're doing trainings. So what will we do? So this plan focuses on training and implementing project-based learning and equity as the vehicle. So really think of a vehicle. So a vehicle has tires, has doors, windows. So you can kind of think of the windows as the 6 C's, right? One window is collaboration, one window is communication. Think of the wheels as formative assessments, all right? Think of one of the doors as ELD. Think of another door, as science, another door as math. So the vehicle is PBL, and everything in that vehicle is going to be integrated with PBL. So we really want to focus on how can we incorporate all these instructional strategies and practice in this vehicle to get to provide a student-centered approach to teaching while providing our teachers a structure to ensure they are developing high-quality and authentic projects. It goes back to really engaging our kids in authentic, real-life, real-problem issues so that they're engaged. And many times our kids will ask us, well, why do I have to learn this, right? Why do I have to learn this? We're giving them the why. What we're giving them because they're going to be engaged in real life situations where they need to collaborate, communicate, use technology, etc. So how are we going to do this? So how is we're going to embed the state content standards, which in the presentation before, that's assessing content standards. So we're going to embed everything within the state content standards so that our students get that practice of being able to describe, debate, provide evidence, use critical thinking, provide students with engaging real-life connections to answer their why, increase opportunities for differentiation for both high-achieving students as well as students who may struggle because of language barriers or other learning obstacles. We want to engage the community. We also want to make sure that we're tapping into our students' prior knowledge, those skills, and wrapped all of that is the graduate profile and the 6 C's. So that's how. One thing that we have is our website. This is developed by our instructional coaches. If I was a teacher in the district, I would be using this resource every day. I would go to this resource daily if I had a question on PBL and I was a secondary teacher, I would click on PBL. It would give you 2 choices. Are you an elementary teacher or a secondary teacher? Then you click in, and then you can say, well, what do you need? Do you need some project ideas, rubrics? If I'm a math teacher, again, you see ELA, ELD combined there. This right here is our one-stop shop. It has everything for our teachers when we're not with them. So our coaches are every day putting more content, more resources. You see GLAD up there, what we just mentioned, around integrated. If you're a GATE teacher, you see GATE up there. So the NGSS is the next generation science standards. And then, so I do want to give a highlight to our, props to our coaches who are doing a great job using this resource. And if you follow us on Twitter, you can also see what's going on. So follow us on Twitter and see the great work that is going on in our schools. All right. Questions, comments?
All right, professional development. You guys have any questions or comments on presentation? Trustee Mack?
Just a quick question that that page. Who's managing that? Where's the content coming from?
So the content, it's from multiple sources. So managing it, we have 2 of our instructional coaches and 1 of our district administrators, Michelle Stevens, who's our coordinator of elementary. And then from there, the content has content that we have created here with our teachers, our district coaches, but also best practices. So for example, BIE, the Buck Institute, they have their content there. We also like to use as we're doing trainings or we attend. So for example, right now, we have a team of math teachers from San Marin High School and Sinaloa, San Jose, and Novato, who's been working for the past 4 days with Stanford University on math. They're going to come back, put whatever the resources they got into that math link.
Okay.
And so that's how it works.
So it's growing. It
is growing,
It's
yes.
living, breathing. Okay, great.
Okay, Trustee Scott.
Can you give us an example? What are we tweeting on Twitter?
So the Twitter is, for example,
Is it content stuff that we're trying to work with our teachers on, or is it for the community at large, or everything, or?
it's all of the above.
Curious.
Yeah, so if you go on there, you're going to see, for example, so we had a training last week for our district math team, and they were doing math focused on inquiry-based learning. So they were really looking at, so they were collaborating. So we're showing the community, look, we're collaborating as teachers. The other thing is we're focused on creative math. So how do we make math creative? And the other thing is we share resources on there. So many times if we're using a certain toolkit, we'll say, hey, so-and-so is using this toolkit, check it out. So it's a way to promote, market, celebrate, and get the word out. Because if people don't hear anything, they will assume that nothing's happening. So we really want to let people know that, hey, we're doing some great things here in Novato. And I've been getting some follows and some questions from other districts saying, hey, can you tell me more about this? I saw a tweet, and we'd like to learn more about what you're doing with, the math initiative with Stanford, for example.
Okay, how else are we getting this information out there besides this? I guess I'm going to start following one more thing.
Well, it'll be good. So
I'm
in terms of
saying-
communication,
I'm saying like on the website, Facebook. I mean, what other media sources are we putting out there?
Instagram, Facebook.
In those tweets, if NUSD and I retweet them, or if I tweet for NUSD, it shows up on our feed on our homepage. Okay, so it recycles through. Okay. Okay. We have an Insta? Oh, good. All right.
Yeah, and
All right.
and the nice.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on
Yeah,
Facebook.
so it's and the nice thing, it's also
What media do we have to be on?
it's a digital yearbook. So if you go to the images, it gives you all the images. So it's great for if Jim wants to do an end of the year report. Hey, go to Twitter. There's like 1,000 pictures you can just throw them on your PowerPoint, and they're real teachers of Novato, not doing things.
Any other questions, comments? I have a question. Well, one of the items that we have put before us is the professional development plan, which is a kind of a chronological calendar of planned events, and I just was wondering if you would remark on it. I'm familiar with the events to date, and it seems like we're on schedule with this, but is there looking like there's going to be any changes, or are you able to, from the things that you've learned, would you do anything differently going forward?
Yes, great question. So a plan, we believe that plans should be living, breathing, should not be stagnant, but should be continually to be reflected on and revised and refined. So So for example, this Thursday, the 22nd, you have an idea of what our elementary, middle schools, and high schools will be doing during the district day, focused on differentiated training for project-based learning, high-quality project design, and then our high schools will be focused on get focused, stay focused, introduction around that. From there, you have our district advisory team, our leadership team that just goes, but yes, it will not look the same because we're going to refine it and add more content to it. So this will probably continue to grow from 5 pages to more.
All right, thank you. So that's it for professional development. Any more questions or comments? So Yvonne, any closing remarks, or we're good on that?
No, thank you. Just it's everybody's working hard here, and there's a lot of passion, a lot of commitment from everybody, and it's very inspiring to work with people that are come here and want to change lives and transform lives. So thank you for your leadership.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we will move on to our next agenda item, which is Staff Report C. This is an update on the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. It's an initial study for the San Marin Stadium Light Project. Superintendent Jim Hogebo.
Thank you, President Nell. So I'm here to give you an update on where we are with our CEQA process in regards to the San Marin Stadium Lights project. So you have a lot of information that's in there. You have kind of the objective and the background for tonight. You have a handout that's kind of background about that was handed out on September 7th about kind of where we started and where we ended up with some timelines in there. There is a copy of the Notice of Preparation, the NOP, which was sent out with the initial study by Rincon. So you have the Notice of Preparation of an Environmental Impact Report, and then you have the initial study itself, and then you have comments that we've received to date from concerned citizens about the lights. Mostly people concerned, some people in favor of that. And then you have, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this pink sheet, which is a revised schedule of events that we worked on with some neighbors as well. So I'm not going to cover all that, but I'll give you the highlights. And I normally don't do PowerPoints, but since Matt from Rincon already had one, I figured I'd use some of the highlights from that. So really tonight is to get the board's input or questions before we go to handing it all off to Rincon to be working on the environmental impact report over the next few months. So that's the purpose, is to see if you have any other questions or concerns or things that you want looked at that you don't think have been looked at to date. So just to do a few timeline things, on really one of the key dates is on May 17th, when the Board of Trustees approved an agreement with Rincon Incorporated to conduct the California Environmental Quality Act CEQA report, which included the initial study and the notice of preparation. The initial study was released to the public on August 25th, 2016, along with the NOP. This began a 30-day public review period, which will end this Friday, September 23rd. After that, we'll take all those comments and suggestions and hand it off to Rincon, and they'll get to work. The findings from the initial study did determine that there were potentially significant impacts of various environmental factors, which I'll go through in a minute. Because of these findings, a full environmental impact report will be conducted. As part of the public review, the district held a scoping meeting at San Marin High School on Wednesday, September 7th, to present the findings and to ask for input concerning the environmental factors. We had about 75 people in attendance there. And again, the comments that we have to date are included, again, and people have up until Friday to submit those. After the scoping meeting, we had a follow-up meeting with a representative group of 7 San Marin neighbors that Mike Jolly, there he is back there, kind of put together some immediate neighbors who live there. And Ben from the high school and the athletic directors and principal had kind of put together a tentative use schedule. How often would the lights be used? What time would they be turned off? That kind of stuff. So we reviewed that, which I'll go over in a minute. And that kind of takes us to where we are tonight. So let me go over, this was part of the environmental impact report presentation that Matt prepared, and I just kind of pulled out some highlights from it. So this kind of goes over the purposes of the CEQA: to disclose any potentially significant environmental impacts of actions, identify ways to avoid or reduce adverse environmental effects, consider feasible alternatives, foster interagency coordination in the review of projects, and enhance public participation in the planning process. The purposes of the scoping meeting were really to inform the community and agencies about the project, and that there was an environmental impact report soliciting impact regarding all the different elements that the environmental impact report should look at, and then inform the community about future opportunities for input. So I think this is kind of a key slide because we've had quite a few meetings already, but we are really at the beginning of the process. So again, the district files a notice of preparation of an EIR. District prepares the draft EIR. So you can see right up in there, the district solicits input on the scope of the environmental impact report content. That's the purpose of the scoping meeting, and that's where we are. So I'm not going to go back over other meetings we've had because I think you guys have the gist of it, but you can see kind of the rest of it right there in terms of where we're going. So basically the two main needs for the lights as presented were that one, to have Friday night games for football, mostly football, but also soccer and lacrosse, and also to improve the PA system. And then the second was to extend the practice time for our schools so that our students weren't having to miss as much class for practice or for games when they'd have to leave early. So it's really the practice time and having Friday night games were the two main reasons, and that's really what the proposed project would address with lighting and upgrades to the PA system. The EIR issues that when the initial study was prepared that will be looked at, that were found in, that there was a need to look at, were aesthetics, which would be light and glare, air quality, cultural resources, greenhouse gases, noise, traffic, and transportation. So those are really the 6 areas that that Rincon's going to look at in more depth in their full environmental impact report, and they'll come out, and Matt is here, so if you have some more questions about exactly what's going to happen with the environmental impact report, he can go over that. They did actually do this process not too long ago down in San Mateo where they're putting lights in. So he can talk to you if you have some more questions about how they do some of their noise studies or their traffic studies or light studies or that kind of thing. So yeah, this was again for the scoping meeting. This is what we wanted to get comments on, and a lot of people have submitted these comments to Leslie, who is still collecting those comments as we speak. And that's the end of that. I think the last thing I wanted to review with you was the pink sheet. So again, thanks to Mike, who's back there. So Mike made it clear that the neighbors in general were not in favor of the lights, had a lot of concerns, which again, I know you guys have all read the comments that the neighbors have. I mean, most of the concerns have to do with noise, glare, light pollution, the sound, the safety issues, having people in the neighborhoods, cleanup issues, trash. If you invite people from other schools, some of the problems with safety that might occur, drinking, that kind of stuff, traffic, congestion, pollution. A lot of the neighbors are concerned about the diminution of property values in the neighborhood, that if the lights are going to be on, that's going to make their houses less valuable. And one thing I will say about, I'll get to this on the pink sheet. So there were other concerns that were brought up about LED lights. There were concerns about the creek. And so again, Matt has noted all those concerns, and those will be looked at in the environmental impact report. And I will say that that's the purpose of the environmental impact report, is to alert the board to all the different impacts that if you did put lights in, well, what are all the effects that that's going to be? So before you're able to make a decision on should we do the lights or not, in addition to where would the money come from, would be, okay, well, what are the impacts? And so that's why you approved, the spending of about $100,000 on this full report, was to see what all those impacts would be. So the last thing I'll go over before I turn it over for questions is this pink sheet. So this is a revised schedule from what we originally had in there. And I'm not going to go over this whole thing. I mean, most of the things that were changed was really that most of the lights would be off for like practices and things at 8 o'clock instead of 8:30. But I guess I'll just go through the kind of notes on the bottom. The high school football game, before I get there, the high school football games were really the freshman games are on Thursday. There's about 5 of those. There are about 5 or 6 varsity and JV games, which would both be played on Friday nights. So the JV games start at 5, and they should be over about 7. The varsity games start at 7. They should generally be over about 9. The lights would be turned off approximately 20 minutes after the games were completed. The big lights and then the egress lights would be turned off after the cleanup was finished of emptying the trash and that kind of thing. Soccer and lacrosse games would begin at approximately 6 and generally be completed by 8. There will be some soccer and lacrosse games held on Saturday, but lights would not be needed. So there really are no Saturday night lights or Sunday night lights. If the let me just finish these. So lights would be needed for football training the last 2 weeks of daylight savings, and lacrosse, track, and field will need lights for practice until daylight savings. So even though the season goes, the fall season from August through November, and the spring season from February to May, obviously you don't need lights in August, and you pretty much don't need lights in September because it's light enough after that. So it would be really for October, November for the fall, and then for from February and March in the spring. Again, lights would not be used on weekends except for possible playoff games, and the field would not be rented to outside groups. It's really important to the neighbors to make sure that we stipulate that we're not rented. The purpose of the lights is for San Marin High School. It's not to be rented out to outside agencies or groups or whoever that might be. As I said, lights would only be needed from October through March. I think that's it really in terms of the schedule of events when they would take place. I would say that the one thing that could be a benefit to the neighborhood if the whole thing goes through would be that currently San Marin Youth Football, which is not Pop Warner, I was told, because it says Pop Warner games, but it's actually not Pop Warner, it's San Marin Youth Football. Is that correct? So they would move from their games being on Sunday to their games being on Saturday. They don't use lights, but they do use a PA system, which, as you'll read from some of the comments, is disturbing to the neighbors. So that would move from Saturday to Sunday. Obviously, the Saturday game, from Sunday to Saturday, and then the games obviously move from Saturday to Friday. So at least that would be one day where there was no PA, which would be on Sunday. So anyway, that could be one trade-off possibly that would be a benefit. So with that, I think unless you have I'll just take questions or comments, or if you want to take other comments or questions, Derek, so I'm not sure how you want to do that.
Okay. Well, I just want to let the board know that we do have some public comment. So if the board would like to have an opportunity to maybe ask the superintendent any clarifying questions on what he just reported prior to taking the public comment, I would suggest that. Or we could just go straight into public comment. So opportunity for clarifying questions. Trustee Mack was first, then Trustee Milrick, and then Trustee Aguila.
So just to clarify, I'm seeing kind of an October through March approach to lights and effectively not turning them on from April through September is the plan?
Right. As long as it's light out or daylight savings, we don't need them, then they would be on.
Okay, so just to be clear, because football, September, so that would be in the time when no lights. Would they start the games early enough so that the 2 games on a Friday night could take place before dark? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I think if that's early enough and it's going to be light out till 9 o'clock, that's fine. So, but then, later on when if it gets, I don't know the exact dates, that's one of the things we'll have to look at.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that we can really work with that window.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then, what was the other question? So really, it's working down to basically 5 Friday night footballs, 5 Thursday night footballs. Those are the only time it goes really past even to 9. Otherwise, it's 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Trustee Miller.
Wanted to understand your comment, which is not in Mr. Jolly's notes, but is a comment about Sunday play, and it sounded like Pop Warner. It's not Pop Warner for a lot of good reasons. It's Novato Youth Football, and San Marin. Yeah, San Marin. It's the community, but they would then play on Saturday. And is your suggestion or proposal that no activity would occur on the field on Sunday, or that there would be play on the field, but there would be no PA system for whatever the play is? It could be a pickup soccer game, but no announced activity. So, because I don't think, and the neighbors can tell me, but I don't think anybody cares if somebody down kicking a soccer ball. It's the loud PA system on Sunday that becomes objectionable. I don't know. I don't live there, so somebody's going to say.
I'm sure they'll comment on that. The whistles are annoying. Sometimes you can get some groups that are annoying. Sometimes there's been some profanity and things. So, but to answer your question, it would be the latter. There would be no PA system on Sunday. As judges reported, people are going to use the field anyway, so we might as well rent it out to them because they're going to come over there and play soccer or whatever they want to play. So we would rent the field out on Sundays, but we would not use the PA system on Sundays.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Okay, actually, Trustee Aguila was next, and then Trustee Scott, and then we'll see.
No, I was just pointing to the audience when you asked for public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so I thought, all right, Trustee Scott.
Do we have the PA system tested from time to time in terms of the decibel volumes? Maybe I'm not saying that right, but I'm sure there are various noise ordinances around, and just to make sure that we're being good neighbors, do we have that tested on any kind of timetable piece, or if you know?
I don't know if we test it, but certainly the neighbors let us know periodically when they feel it's too loud. And Judge would know, and I don't actually know. There's a decibel rating that it has to be under. I don't know, Mike, do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at my property, which is immediately north of the field, I can hear everything. It's almost like St. Paul's Whispering Gallery in London. You whisper at one end, you can hear it. It's remarkable. I mean, I welcome any of you to come and listen.
So,
But, it's not been measured, and it's really a function of how close the microphone is.
So there is an ordinance that says it can't exceed a certain amount. I don't know what that is. We'll find out, and that's, I'm sure, what Matt. Is there anything you want to talk, Matt? Is there anything you want to say about that in terms of what you guys do with testing and things, or? Okay.
Okay.
Well, lights or no lights, our PA system management policy needs to be followed and addressed, and maybe we need to take a look at that anyway.
Okay.
If I could just touch on that.
Well, I want to check with Trustees Scott.
Yeah, I'm just looking to gather more information is all. I'm just gathering info. Thank you.
And I think I can help clarify, because there was a time, and I think folks who've been here around a while, when Novato's PA system was just outrageous. It was blasting all the way out Indian Valley and back. And to Mike's point, it was very similar to that. Since Judge and his team, I guess it was, I forget who, anyway, put in the Bose system, it's now very regulated, And there's been no complaints that I know of about that sound system. In fact, there's issues with it being too quiet at times because it modulates itself based on the crowd noise. If there's no crowd noise, it goes down. If there's high crowd noise, it goes up to stay over it. And it's fully automated. You cannot play with it. However, and this is where I'm getting to, the question, San Marin, I believe, is only half installed in that regard. It only has the small pole speakers on the visitor sideline, which are the right thing to have. But on the home sideline, it's a full-blown PA that blows right out over the hill. And that's your problem, I think. And so what I would recommend, what I'd ask, is let's just please get that same sound system that we have at Novato at San Marin as soon as possible, regardless of what's going on.
All right. I think you got some consensus there to look into that particular issue. Trustee Aguila, if you could wait, I was going to give Trustee Cooper his first question.
Thank you. My question would be more geared towards Rincon, and I'm willing to wait for public comment, and then I'd like to ask you a couple questions.
Trustee Aguila.
Yeah, just saying that we want to do the best for the neighbors and be good neighbors. It sounds like the light may not be such an issue versus the sounds. And so if we can, I don't want to wait for the neighbors to tell us when it's too loud. And so my question would be, what can we do to make sure that we don't go over? And so we can just kind of revisit that and get more information and hear more from the community so that we can make sure that it is a guarantee so that, I mean, nothing's a guarantee, but go through rules and regulations and policy or whatever we need to do to make sure that we're being considerate.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's a good point. And whether there's lights or not lights, obviously the neighbors are saying that there's a problem with the sound system, so that's what we need to take a look at, regardless of that process anyway. The lights, the neighbors are still going to be concerned about lights. There are certainly the light systems they have now are a lot better than the ones they used to have. Instead of blasting the glare, it's more targeted. But they'll let you know they still have concerns about those lights too.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I'm not worried about the lights either. I'm just saying let's make sure that we're being considerate of both lights but it sounds like we need to focus more on the sound since that's more of an issue because with the lights it's going to be 50% of the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any more clarifications or questions? Then we'll take public comment before we hear from Recon. Or actually, I'm just going to add, would it be more appropriate to have? Oh, he could address it. Okay, that's good. Okay, so at this time, we're going to take public comment on this agenda item. And the first card I have is Steve Murphy of Novato. Mike Jolly would be next if you want to get ready. And we have a 3-minute limit on public comments.
Yeah, good evening. I was here the night that you voted 6-0 to approve this process, which started this whole thing rolling. The other night on September 12th, this is the first time we saw this. This is 6 days of lights and use. So you voted on 6 uses of football. That was all we heard about, and then you hit us with this. It's a lot more than 6 nights of football. I don't know how you can justify voting on 6 nights and come up with this. I was there with this group with Superintendent Hogenboom. First time we saw it. We had no input on this. This was presented to us like take it or leave it. It wasn't a good thing to see. They talk about community. We've just checked off boxes for you. There hasn't been any good faith bargaining at all. It's pretty disgusting. You talk out of both sides of your mouth at these meetings, and they hit us with this. I'm the one that stood up here and said you live in a bubble. Do any of you remember that? On the meeting, you voted 6-0 to spend $100,000. And then we had the tragedy at Novato High School. The bubble has burst. There is violence in Novato. There is gangs. There is drinking. There's drugs. You can't put your head in the sand forever. Kids will be kids. They get together as a group, and the mentality goes down. There's a lot of bad can happen about this. And when something does happen bad, the parents usually go, he was such a good kid, how could that happen? Well, it can happen. So I'd just like you to think about opening up night games, which they don't have in San Francisco anymore, and I spoke about this before, because of the violence. It does happen. You can't kid yourself. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you for your comments. Mike Jolly. And after Mike is Russ Dodge.
Thank you. Thank you. I've asked staff twice for a itemized number of lighted events that this equals. It's just too complex to work out. I tried my best. I was at the May 12th meeting with Jim. I tallied roughly 300. That may not be right, but Marin Catholic, in their reapplication of August 15th, continued to use their 514 number. So we need an itemized number of lighted events that we can verify, okay? We were a little disappointed, the 80 to 100 of us that were there at the scoping meeting, that none of our school board members was there. Many people said to me later they thought that was indicative that the board has made up their mind about the stadium lights at San Marin, that they're going to put them in, okay, regardless of the protocols used in addressing them. Jim tried to point out that he thought that was not the case. The board hadn't made up their mind, but the actions spoke loudly that none of you were there. I'd encourage you to come out and show up. I really appreciate the comments tonight about neighborhood. That makes me feel better than it has in the past, okay? Just the timeline of the NUSD notice to the San Marin neighborhood. Basically, it looks like that staff and the board talked with parents, boosters, and students in the late summer of October of 2015. And instead of coming to us, homeowners, voters, taxpayers, you deputized incorrectly, in my opinion, the boosters to approach us. You should have come to us. You owed us that as voters, taxpayers, et cetera. The boosters, many of us went to the January 27th booster meeting. Okay, we were told by the boosters that they would pay for the lights. We saw Jim a week later. He said, no, NUSD will pay for these lights. I have an email from staff saying that in March of 2016, there was a $1,012,000 balance in Facilities Fund 51, which was the fund to be used for the lights. And now Jim at the scoping meeting surprised us all by saying, you don't know the source of the funds. Now, clearly, you must know the source of the funds. You're already well down that road. I find that incredulous, okay? So the first communication that our San Marin neighborhood had from you people was the May 4th letter. I'm reading. This year, the move of soccer from a fall spring sport to a winter sport became effective under MCAL. Okay, this change triggered the need for all 4 soccer teams to practice and use fields at nearly the same time due to limited daylight in the late fall and winter. A community conversation regarding stadium lights began in conjunction with possible solutions to this change. Okay, that community discussion did not involve the neighbors at all. Okay, because we weren't notified until May 4th. Okay, and I might add, I have here the August 11th 2015 board meeting highlights from this board, okay, further to your May 12th Carducci report, okay? And I'm quoting Karen Maloney. Karen Maloney provided the board with an update on the impact of the MCAL soccer season change on NUSD fields. With the new soccer schedule recently published, NUSD will be able to accommodate JV and varsity games without the need for lights. That's your words. That was August 11th, okay? And then you tell us the justification on an official communication from this board on May 4th was the MCAL lights. And if you look at the Carducci report, which you people paid for, you commissioned on May 12th, paragraph 4 says, one synthetic turf field would accommodate soccer practice and games 5 days a week and be available for non-school use on Saturdays and Sundays. No mention of lights was in paragraph 4. None. Okay?
Okay, Mr. Jelly, could you
Thank you very much
conclude
for
your
your time.
comments? All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Russ Dodge. And after Russ is Jerry Kenny.
Though this draft EIR addresses lights and a sound system, the only real question is whether or not we're going to have night football. If night football was not being considered, no one would be asking for lights. All the rest of the issues raised are just packaging. The issue of night football at San Marin is a straightforward one. Students and their parents think it would be fun to have the night football and feel the neighbors are selfish for not wanting to bear the negative impacts this will have on them. The draft ER that was made available to the public has certainly identified a number of real concerns. I know several people, including myself, have submitted others. As you consider the draft EIR, please remember that whatever level of noise occurs in the daytime will, if moved to the nighttime, be perceived as significantly louder. Recognition of this difference will be included in the final EIR because that's mandated. More people will be home at nighttime to hear the noise. The 80-foot poles with 11 downward-facing and 2 upward-facing lights for the main lighting will dominate the scenic vista of anyone living anywhere close to San Marin, and there will be considerably more poles and additional lighting. Let me also say that our concern isn't just the sound system, much more is the crowd noise, and there isn't anything you're going to be able to do about crowd noise. I want to make one last point. There is a mistaken belief that there is broad support for night football. This belief is based, at least in part, on the fact that over 1,000 people signed a petition supporting it. In fact, those people signed a petition that said the district would not have to pay for the lights, and they told the light and sound system were designed to have minimum impact on the people living close to school, and there would be only about 6 games a year. As one person said, who signed it, said to me, it was free and wouldn't bother anybody. Of course I signed it. There's going to be a significant impact if you put lights on. The only question is, when you get that EIR report coming back, identifying those, whether you're willing to deal with the fact that if you go ahead, it's going to hurt us.
All right, thank you. Jerry Kenny.
Good evening. On page 7 of the 2016 Facilities Master Plan, the school board states that community involvement and engagement is a priority. The board pledges to improve communication. The district pledges to provide information about school and district activities. The district pledges to seek out input. It is my experience, as well as that of a number of other citizens, that the district consistently fails to do this. after going through channels, up the chain of command, questions and concerns submitted to the superintendent are ignored. In March and July, I emailed all 7 board members pointing out this breakdown in communications. Not a single board member even bothered to acknowledge receipt of this communication. On August 23rd, I emailed the superintendent and the president of the Board of Trustees requesting answers to 6 simple questions. I received an email back stating, "We will get back to you by October 21st, 2 months later." I will send each of you a copy of this correspondence between me and the district tomorrow. Clearly, there is a discrepancy between what 7 board members and the superintendent say and what you actually do. It is time to stop stonewalling. It is time to practice what you preach. It is time to break free of peer pressure and bad professional advice. Each of you has the moral obligation to see that the district lives up to your commitments to the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Larry Scheibel. And then Ben Philpott after that.
Good evening. There are several issues in the draft initial study that I do not agree with. I believe that environmental factors, including biological resources, hazards and hazardous materials, public services, and recreation should have been identified as having potential significant impacts. I briefly discussed these issues during the scoping meeting on September 7th and will be submitting written comments. The negative impacts of light pollution, noise, and traffic are easily understood and are the reasons these projects are opposed by most nearby residents. I would like to discuss one of several other issues that could be even more important. That is the potential for wildfires occurring as a direct result of this project. For years, there have been problems with students smoking cigarettes and marijuana and consuming beer in the parks and open space areas surrounding the school. During night activities, these problems, including the potential for fires, will be substantially increased. It is not difficult to visualize someone, possibly impaired by marijuana or alcohol use, stumbling at night on uneven ground and steep slopes in these areas, dropping a cigarette and starting a fire. It is not reassuring that on page 28 of the draft initial study, you indicate that our homes and residential area would serve as a fire break to prevent fires from reaching the stadium. You may want to reconsider this, as the houses and residential areas in the Oakland Hills did not function very well as fire breaks during the 1991 firestorm. I never had much faith this EIR would discuss anything other than the most obvious problems, including traffic, noise, and light pollution. It is apparent that other real issues, such as drug and alcohol use during night activities, wildfires, and potential crime, violence, and gang activities will not be discussed. Ignoring these issues will not make them go away or make them any less real. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ben Philpott.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to speak. I'm going to try and be brief. I just want to, again, thank you guys for getting us to this point and starting this whole process. I know that myself and a lot of my coworkers and people in this room have worked hard to do our due diligence to get to this point. And I think we're on a good process to kind of learn more and make an educated decision about this. And I do think the bigger picture is, we work for our students. That's why we're here. And we see that this can have a severe positive impact on their lives. I think of my soccer players that they'll be staying in school more often. But it definitely is somewhat of a nuisance on the neighbors. And I think when we consider those things, we have to do the research and make sure that we have all that information to be good neighbors and do what we can. I think that it's necessary to get not necessarily a number of events, but just a time or impact that this would have on the neighbors to really have hours of usage, time of usage, just because we can have 4 30-minute events, or we could have 2 1-hour events, and it'd be the same amount of impact. So I think we just really make sure that we're accurate in doing our due diligence. And again, just thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that concludes our public comment on this portion of tonight's meeting. So I will bring it back to Superintendent Hogaboom to introduce representatives from Recon or to comment further.
Yeah, I don't think I have any other comments. Matt, did you want to make any other comments? When you're away for. Okay, so why don't we just answer any other questions you guys have?
So you're available for questions, and that's fine. So I will then now turn it back to the board for questions. And Trustee Cooper was first, and then Trustee Millerick.
Yes, good evening. Thank you once again, or let me say thank you to all the residents who've come here tonight and expressed your opinions and concerns. And just from my standpoint, I want to make sure you know that your opinion is very important to me, and I want to make sure that we do this process correctly. I get involved with EIRs through my employment, and I know sometimes I cuss at the process because it's so long, so drawn out, and so thorough. That's the benefit to this that I see, that what we're about to theoretically embark upon tonight and approve will be the CIR process. And that's all it is a process of investigation and finding out what the facts are. Nothing more, just what the facts are. So thank you for coming. My question to you is, how do you, in your study, quantify, or how do you project what future noise will be or what future traffic? Could you just go into that briefly?
Sure. So at this point in the process, we've completed the draft initial study, and it identified potentially significant impacts for both noise and traffic. So those issue areas were slated to be investigated in the EIR, which has not yet begun. First, we collect all of the scoping comments, and as Jim mentioned, the scoping period closes September 25th. So after we've collected all of the concerns and comments on the project, then we begin development of the EIR. We have hired 2 sub-consultants. RGD Acoustics is looking at noise, and DKS Associates is looking at traffic. The traffic modeling is fairly complex, and it looks at level of service at, I believe, somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 intersections for this project. And that prediction is based on stadium capacity, predicted attendance levels, frequency of events. So they'll first take measurements of existing traffic levels at these 15 to 20 intersections, and then they have a traffic distribution model that they use that predicts what routes people will take to the stadium. And based on traffic distribution and predicted attendance, they will measure the level of service at these intersections and report back as to whether the level of service degrades or not. Noise is by RGD Acoustics, and they've already taken existing noise measurements at San Marin. They took, I believe, 3 72-hour long-term measurements and another 5 or 6 short-term measurements, some of which occurred during an existing football game. So that was how they attempted to capture a baseline noise environment, which also included a game. Now, keep in mind that baseline noise environment uses the existing PA system, which would be modified under the proposed project. And then in terms of predicting project noise levels, it will depend somewhat on what PA system they model. So we'll be working with the district to give our best estimate of what PA system they will be installing. But we'll probably report the potential noise impacts as a range of noise levels based on what PA system is installed eventually. And for San Mateo Unified, the PAs that they installed had a, I believe it's DLC, which is like digital limiter control, which, okay, yeah, I think you brought it up earlier. So this digital limit control is a centralized limiter that responds automatically to fluctuating noise levels, and you can set a hard limit on it. So you could limit your decibel output to, say, 65 decibels or something at the property line, something like that. So that can also be explored in terms of whether a DLC will be used. Like I said, the EIR hasn't begun yet, so I don't know how the noise analysis is going to come out yet, but it will be modeled based on the predicted PA that we believe would be installed. And in this case, if there's uncertainty, then we would report that uncertainty and would report a range of potential noise impacts.
Okay, and then just to follow up another topic of the same kind of discussion. Have you ever, in your experience doing EIRs, have you ever, and how could you predict, there's been mention of gangs, drugs, increased alcohol consumption, et cetera. How do you get a baseline, which you just mentioned, for those? And I can figure out how you extrapolate it, but yeah, how do you develop a baseline for those things?
Well, those issues aren't necessarily environmental concerns per se, and CEQA and NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, and California Environmental Quality Act, both are aimed at looking at environmental concerns. They can indirectly become environmental concerns if they affect public services, such as police service, or if they introduce hazards. And as one of the commenters noted, wildfire is a hazard that's covered in EIRs. So we do address public safety under the hazards section, but it's addressed from an environmental standpoint rather than telling people whether they should consume alcohol or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? We've got Trustee Morick and then Trustee Aguilar.
Couple. So we've had some testimony this evening. Does this information go on that we've heard this evening transcribed and go on the record, or you keep audio tapes of it or videotapes? How does the information that was presented tonight get in the EIR record? Because clearly, I think people are expecting. I'm thinking it should be on the record. How does that work?
Yeah. So the draft EIR will contain a summary of public comments
from this meeting as well as other public meetings?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. So the other thing that I heard mentioned, and I tried to follow this pink sheet, and I had the same problem. I don't know how many nights in any one calendar year lights are on or off, or I heard there'll be only a few Friday games and no Saturday or Sunday games, but there's practice sessions, and so I got confused, and so I would like to have that clarified. so we're all looking with exactly the same data. And I think that was a request from one of the speakers as well. Just make it crystal clear what the concept is. And are you considering alternatives, or are you if, for example, the comment was made, and there are comments in this that says no Saturday PA, or no Sunday PA, no Saturday or Sunday lights, only Friday night lights, and only certain, and then practice lights, is that the scope of the proposal you're analyzing, or are you looking at alternatives? I don't understand how you can look at 25 different alternatives, I guess. So I assume you're picking one or two.
CEQA does require you to look at alternatives. At the bare minimum, the project and no project alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the legal minimum standard that needs to be met. And CEQA also requires you to look at a reasonable range of alternatives.
Oh, okay.
So we will consider a reasonable range of alternatives in the EIR. We have not identified them at this point, but they generally could include changes in use, even something as drastic as a change in the site. But keep in mind that the alternatives still need to meet the purpose and need of the project. So there may be alternatives that would eliminate all of the environmental impacts, no project being one of those. But potentially, I mean, no project may end up having impacts of its own that we will look at. But the alternatives are weighed against whether they meet the purpose and need of the project.
Okay, thank you for your response. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Trustee Aguila.
Yeah, I just want to kind of piggyback on what Trustee Cooper said about this is about information, and we voted for information only, because the reality is just because some of us didn't attend a meeting or that we didn't answer an email. I mean, I believe I answered. We get a bunch of emails, and we have to go to a bunch of meetings. And to be honest with you, I haven't made up my mind. So that's just my point of view. But I believe I did. I've answered some emails regarding this issue. I'm not sure who it was to. So if I didn't, I apologize publicly. Okay. As far as not attending one of the meetings, I'm not sure. One of the things I wanted to say is, because we haven't decided as a board yet, but my question is, if we do decide to go forward, and that's a big if, safety is an issue for me. And so one of the things that was brought up tonight was that kids will be kids. And I agree with that 100%. So is there a way, if we do go forward with this, if I'm sure we're going to be very careful and have safety in mind. So is there a way that maybe we could partner with other community organizations and agencies where obviously we would need, and especially this being the first time, we would need a lot of adult supervision, and we would need a lot of adults present. And you don't have to answer tonight, but I'm just throwing it out. Could we partner with Novato Youth Center? Could we partner with the Novato Blue Ribbon Coalition and just have a lot of adults present so that we can kind of reduce the safety concerns? And so I don't know. That's just an idea to throw out there. Again, you don't need to answer that tonight, but it's just something that we can look into. Maybe seniors, responsible seniors in high school. Maybe we can add community hours to come to. Hi, how about that? Add community hours for them to attend football games, but they would be there as kind of like chaperones or. I don't know. We would just an idea, but thank you, and I thank the community for coming out and expressing their opinions.
President Nell, can I respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I forgot to mention that one of the things that came out of that meeting on September 12th, that was kind of the follow-up to go over the proposed usage schedule, was some strong concerns from the neighbors that there wasn't a safety plan in place. And so there were a couple ex-law enforcement officers that were there. And so we are going to have a follow-up meeting with that, and we're going to meet with the Novato Police Department and kind of draft a safety plan and what might be needed in order to ensure adequate safety. So we're going to kind of do exactly that. And we'll talk to probably, I guess, some other places and see what they do. But the specific request was to meet with Novato Police, and so we're going to do that.
I will get to you in turn. Greg Mack, the ordinance.
Back to the safety thing, I think, and I understand how it's not a CEQA thing, but if we could somehow formalize that study, impact, whatever it might be, some way of just assessing, okay, we're changing from Saturdays to Fridays. Is there a credible organization that can help us assess that impact in some way? Whether it's NPD, Sheriff's Office, or a consulting firm, obviously without spending a lot of money. But something to just kind of see it. And maybe even take a look at neighboring communities, San Rafael, Petaluma, you go north, anything up north, because they all do it. They all have Friday night football. Ideally, maybe a community that just switched from Saturdays to Friday nights. I know out in the East Bay, there's a few. College Park High School just switched last year. That's a great candidate right there. And I believe the district you worked with in the past would be good in that regard. But talking to the safety groups there to understand that impact, that'd be great. Another thing, and I was part of the meeting, the group, along with Mike, to select Rincon. And I think there's a lot of people here who don't understand or don't know the degree to which you guys are experiencing this. And I think it would be useful to share a little bit about how much you guys have done this in the past. But I'll defer to Derek if that's appropriate.
I think that's a question that can be answered.
Yeah, at some point. And there was another question, but I think, and then with regard to not being at meetings, trust me, I wanted to be at that meeting, but I was traveling. But I will be at the meetings, so you can count on me being there.
Would you mind giving us a little bit of your experience with other school districts? I'm assuming that was your question and related to. No, I mean that's your question. I think it's something that while we have our consultant here, we should get an answer so we know who we're working with.
Yeah, of course, I would not mind. I'll address the safety questions first, based on scoping comments received thus far. We will be revising the draft initial study to expand the discussion of public services, and we'll be in touch with Novato PD. And then also whatever comes out with the district's meeting and the police department could be incorporated into the project description or into the discussion of public services. So that's the way that safety concerns will be incorporated into the EIR. You asked if it would be formalized somehow, and the method of formalization would be incorporation into the project description. And then the project description is then binding in that that's what the proposed project is, and that's what's analyzed under CEQA. And it could be further elaborated through a board action, through a resolution, or any sort of board action that members of the board choose to take. In terms of Rincon's experience with lighting projects, we just completed an EIR for San Mateo Union School District, High School District, and they installed new stadium lighting at 5 high schools, Aragon, Capuchino, Hillsdale, San Mateo, and I forget the 5th one, sorry. And they also updated their PA systems at all 5 stadiums. And we looked at 5 issues in the EIR, including aesthetics, air quality, greenhouse gas, noise, and traffic, and also had a traffic study for that project and noise modeling from the same 2 sub-consultants that we're using this time. Prior to that, we did a lighting project for the University of Claremont, or Claremont McKenna University. They installed new stadium lighting, and we did an EIR for that project. We did another EIR for San Jose State University, also a stadium lighting along with other athletic facilities. We did the UC Berkeley Cal Aquatics EIR, which included expanded athletic facilities, including new lighting. And then we've assessed lighting impacts for literally hundreds of EIRs across California.
All right, thank you. Student trustee, Paige.
So speaking as a student, my freshman year I came from San Ramon Valley High School, and we did have Friday night football. We never really had a problem until we did have a problem with kids smoking, but we had the San Ramon Valley, or the Danville police, because it's kind of in Danville, kind of San Ramon. But we had the police come out, and they actually took care of the kids that were smoking and told them they had to stop. But at Novato this year, we are not allowing kids to leave the dance early. When we have school dances like homecoming, or we had a back to school night already. And I think that we could maybe just do that for football if gang violence is a problem. Kids will make sure to let them know before they go into the game, once you come in, you can't leave until the game's over and you're being released. Because then we're not liable for any gang violence. And the gang violence, in my history, I've lived here for a year and a half now, and what I've experienced is that it's going to happen no matter what, if it's going to happen. And it doesn't just happen at nighttime, and nighttime does increase with marijuana use, but kids use it in the daylight. It happens in broad daylight, and you can't stop it unless that's not a board's problem, in my opinion. That's just more of a community problem that kids do drugs, and you can't. Friday night football isn't going to increase that. In my opinion, it's not really going to decrease it either. So my suggestion is just maybe to keep the kids inside the game if you're really concerned about gang violence. And at San Ramon, like I said, we paired with the police, and we never really had a problem with any kids getting hurt or any gang violence.
All right, thank you. Any more questions, comments, follow-ups on what you've asked? Trustee Mulrick, and then I've got a couple.
Clear about the Friday night games when the list of activities, what I saw here in the draft, we have preseason games which tend to go out of league with other schools. We have CFF, California Interscholastic Federation, CIF, pardon me, games that are schools that we play that are somewhere between Fort Bragg and Mill Valley, something like that. And then we have postseason games that we may host if we get to postseason game, which may include out-of-league player, other schools, depending on who's hosting, as they work their way up to get the best team in California. We had Marin Catholic actually played in the Oakland Coliseum for the state championship one year. So with lights, amazingly enough. So I'm interested in when we say lights for games, we're clear about the postseason and the preseason activity, and we think about that, and I record that information as well. And I heard it isn't just football, there's other sports, lacrosse, and because we're doing this because there's no place for the soccer teams to play in the winter. So anyhow, just if we're comprehensive about the list, just so everybody has the same data. Because whatever this is, and if there's an agreement, that'll be it. There won't be any other games besides that. Even if we take, some future sport, I don't know what the next sport is that's going to be popular, but, if we make a deal, we're going to make a deal, and that'll be it. If it's 8 games or 2 games or whatever. So I just want to be thorough. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Okay, I had a couple of questions, and maybe I'll just start out with where Trustee Milrick left off is, in your experience, are you aware of any abilities that the community would have to assign riders or regulations and title type restrictions to the uses with this property, for instance? Like, this board's not always going to be here, but down the road, is there some mechanism or body or set of rules or regulations, contracts that could help a community have some guarantees that the conditions set forth in the installation and the operation of a field like this would be kept? Those obligations would be kept.
CEQA in and of itself doesn't impose those type of restrictions. But it would be the board's prerogative to craft those restrictions, most likely in the form of a board resolution that would then be adopted and would have to be amended or appealed by a future board action.
So, okay, well, I was hoping that we could get more than just a local board guarantee, because boards change over time, and I was just wondering if you'd had any experience with some entity outside of that.
Well, the use of the field.
Typical title restrictions, for instance, in land use, say, you can't do this the way they're zoned, et cetera.
Sure. In the case of a school district, the land use restrictions and zoning ordinances are somewhat different than they would be for other private property.
Fairly autonomous, basically. So, all right. Well, then, in that lane, a big part of environmental impact reports circle around land use, and so I was just wondering how we were going to address. I mean, how you interpret when I read the report, things along. Does the project align with the general plan? Would be an example of a city would have a general plan and their goals for the next 10, 20 years and what they thought were the right types of things to do.
Sure.
Is your ER going to bring a measurement into, say, our facilities master plan and our general education plan? How are we going to align this project with our overall objective, which is the education, public education of children?
The project's purpose and need and the description of the project are crafted with the facilities master plan in mind, and ideally should not conflict, and I'm not aware of a conflict, and I'm sure the district will make me aware of one if there is. And the proposed project, as I understand it, is not proposing any changes to land use. So there would not be a rezoning or a redesignation of a general plan land use that I'm aware of.
Sure. So often is the case when you have a project like this going forward, and maybe in the commercial or private sector, you essentially end up with an asset of some kind. And the purpose of that asset is to generate funds or provide housing or some community benefit or something along those lines. And so what I'm asking for is will the EIR review our graduate profile and our master and our goals, our priorities, and align them with our objective, which is education of
Derek, I wouldn't want my EIR consultant to review this board's policies, and I think that's what you just are asking. So I agree that he's got to review the environmental, but I'd like to ask that if you want to have that conversation about having an outside consultant review the board policies, we agendize it and have a conversation, because I don't like the suggestion that we need an environmental consultant to school policy that we're charged with, the 7 of us, to make. So I'm uncomfortable with the conversation.
No, I think you misunderstand my question, and if you'd allow me to ask my questions, I'd appreciate that. And in no way would I be interested in absolving or taking away the power of this board. But what I'm trying, I may not be articulating this quite correctly, but essentially when a project comes forward, there has to be a need for it. And so what I was trying to identify is like, if the need is public education and the project is delivering public education, it says here in the private sector examples that you measure the site and what it does against the local land use plans or general plans. So in the public education world, wouldn't that be similar? I'm just trying to, because I'm asking you how you do it, because I can see how it works for private property, but this is a different entity because we have a need, it's something we're trying to do, but the impact that it's going to have on the community, is where I'm trying to figure out how you translate our objective, which is education, to things along the lines of city general plans.
Sure. So if you're asking about the land use section of the initial study.
I am, and that's why I'm trying to translate that to public education.
Okay. The land use section, or land use as an issue area in CEQA, is fairly specifically focused on conformity with general plan land use designations and zoning. So I believe the educational goals of the district would be out of scope from a CEQA perspective in terms of addressing land use. But if you wanted to ask how the educational goals of the district were incorporated into this analysis, it would most likely be only in the form of the project description and the purpose and need of the project. So if the district chose to define the purpose and need of the project as including an educational component, then we would describe that in the document. But the project description and purpose and need of the project comes to us from the district. So we're not telling the district what the purpose and need of the project is. They tell us, and then we analyze the potential environmental impacts.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you. I think that clears things up. Yeah. Okay. So that actually was the questions that I had tonight. So I appreciate that. And just since I went, any more follow up or questions or interest? Okay. So then we'll. All right. Sure. Trustee Mack.
For dragging this on, but you listed a whole bunch of projects, and obviously you guys have done this a lot. And it sounded like all of them got approved, but I'm sure there's mitigations. Can you maybe kind of give us an example of some of the mitigations you typically see in these projects? Because I want people in this room and in general, in the record, to understand that you guys just don't rubber stamp things. You actually do the due diligence.
Sure. Typical mitigation would include changes to the proposed use schedule. So that's generally what you see is lights off time or sound off time, frequency of use, that type of thing. Other mitigation could be built into the project design, placement of the PA, how the sound is directed, how the sound is limited, placement of the lighting, how the light is focused, at what level the lights are provided, amount of lumens, whether there's light and glare measured off property, and if that could be mitigated by moving a light pole over, moving it closer to the field, something like that. Sometimes we look at sound walls. They're generally found to be infeasible, and they have their own impacts. If you install a 20-foot sound wall, the neighbors won't hear the PA, but they'll have a 20-foot solid wall in front of them, and then that has aesthetic impacts, that could have safety concerns, whether the stability of the wall was a concern or whether it introduced a place for criminal elements to hide or abscond, et cetera. So we have looked at sound walls in the past and generally found them to not be desirable, but other mitigation, we sometimes look at off-site parking or shuttle programs if traffic is a big concern. Other visual screening if aesthetics are a concern. tree planting, stuff like that.
So I have a operational follow-up, if you don't mind, because you mentioned traffic, and I don't know how to describe this any other way, but it seems like a lot of the concerns are about leakage of students into the neighborhood, whether it's a wildfire concern or it's a malicious behavior of some kind. Have you experienced any closing off the paths? I mean, would be recommendations to flow traffic at the end of a practice or a game or something differently? Or is that the type of thing that could be considered or would be brought forward as a mitigation on your part? Or you would point out the problem and then we would try to figure out how to solve it? Or do you have ideas about that?
Well, I can give you San Mateo example. We found a couple significant traffic impacts. The traffic analysis is mainly focused on level of service, and so the two mitigations that we had there were installing a right-hand turn-only sign in one location and changing the signal timing at another intersection. Parking is a typical concern, but parking is not actually an issue under CEQA, although we do typically address it. In terms of closing off of egress, ingress, that introduces safety concerns typically and would need involvement of a city public works department or something like that. So it generally is, we could propose it as mitigation, but it would need a sign off by another public agency, so it wouldn't be guaranteed. So in those cases where another public agency needs to approve a proposed mitigation, then we don't assume implementation. And then we leave it as a significant impact. And we recommend the mitigation, but don't assume that it would be implemented necessarily. But these are all very future issues. You know, we haven't gotten to the impact analysis at this point.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so I had my questions answered. Any more questions for Recon or our superintendent? Okay, seeing none, then I think we get ready to move on to our next discussion action item. I want to thank you very much for coming tonight, answering our question, and facilitating our project.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is 14A. This is a discussion action item. It is the No Bells Initiative at Novato High School, and we're going to start off with our superintendent, Jim Hogaboom, and our principal from Novato High, Matt Baldwin.
Thank you, sir. We'll just wait a second anyway. So thank you, President Nell. I'm going to keep my comments really short. My involvement in this was Matt asked me to come over for a meeting with him and Glenn Corey and Rob Lippincott, and they were excited about a new initiative they called No Bells, and met with them in May. And it sounded like an amazing, innovative program that they were thinking about doing, so I gave my initial blessing to it. You know, the board, I think, has heard about it. I've given you some updates about it. So really tonight, just to talk about the process, the planning is underway and it's been going on and it's changed. So they're here to kind of give you an update on that. I gave my tentative approval to a budget, which you'll see in there. So this is why this is a discussion act. It's an action item, not just a discussion, because this is really the first time the board has had to really ask questions and approve this part. So really what we're here to do is explain to you how the planning's going, a little bit more about the program. And then I have, so far I've paid $12,000 out of my superintendent's budget to move this along. The rest of the $18,000 would come out of either career technical education funds, or if that didn't work out, would come out of the general fund to continue the planning project. So that's really the the action tonight is for you to get your questions and concerns out there, and then to approve going forward till January. And then what they would do is go continue the planning and come back with a finalized proposal for you in January to really start the pilot project in the fall. So that's kind of a little bit about where we are with the process. And with that, I will turn it over to Matt.
Let's turn into the No Crowd initiative real quick. So thank you for having us. I appreciate it. My name is Matt.
Talking about education now, so
yeah,
all that interest walked out.
So it's exciting. It's an exciting time. We've been working on this. Mr. Rob Lippincott and Mr. Glenn Corey and I have been kind of working on this for quite a while. I think it's been a brainchild and a passion of Glenn's for a long time, and I know that he and Rob have been interested in doing something like this for a long time, and they'll get into that. But they kind of roped me in, and I've gone hook, line, and sinker. And because the reason why I'm completely invested in this as a concept is that I think I'm completely on board with the concept that we could be doing so much more in education in general, but specifically in our high schools to engage and create relevant instruction and a relevant community atmosphere with our kids in high school and make it profound and a great experience. And obviously, we're on our way with the 6 C's. We've kind of created the blueprint with PBL. I think, like Yvonne said earlier, we've designed and are using the vehicle that's going to get us there. And what we're trying to implement with the No Bells initiative is to take the 6 C's, take the district goals of equity, student success, staff support, and community engagement and involvement, and really kind of take it to another level. One of the things that I always kind of go back to when I talk about and I think about the No Bells initiative and I think about Novato High School in general is, the 2 questions I've always asked my staff since I've gotten there is, what is the one thing that happened to you while you're going through school that was profound in your educational experience that made you want to become a teacher that you remembered? And for the most part, 99% of the time, they're going to talk about a project or something that resonated with them. And, I read today and I sent it to these guys in the gym that Yale is changing the way they admit people based on the essays they're asking kids to write. And one of the questions they're asking them to reflect on a time in the last few years when you felt genuine excitement learning about something. And it's like, the very first thing I did is, I think the same thing that Jim did, is kind of grimace, like, oh gosh, what is that? Like, and as a teacher, if I ask my staff that, are you creating those moments? Are our kids walking away every single day from their classrooms with that in their mind, saying, wow, I had a great moment today, or I had several great moments, hopefully, that they could easily answer this essay question with. And I think, and then lastly, if the state of California said, you don't have to go to school tomorrow, would students show up? And I can tell you right now, I know that students would show up to this product design class. And I know that we have, like Jim says, and I think I say it every time I come here, but we have those pockets of innovation, but now it's time to kind of start to build something even greater, where it's not pockets of innovations, it's schools of innovation, it's communities of innovation, it's all of us being on the same page, going towards something that is special for kids and is student-driven, student voice and choice, student relevant, and they're involved in this process to build something that's amazing, that aligns with everything we're trying to accomplish. So it's really exciting. We're as a site, we were kind of a couple months ahead of the graduate profile before we started to get going on the graduate profile. We were a couple months ahead on the PBL thing before we started getting going on the PBL thing. So our staff really feels like they're on board for all of these great things that we're doing. It's a good time for us to kind of run with the concept of a school within a school with No Bells initiative. I don't know if you would call it a school within a school, but a special program on campus to be kind of that fishbowl or to pilot something that everybody on campus, everybody in our district and statewide, nationally, everybody should come and see what this is going to look like. And hopefully we do it really well with conviction and with student with kind of student input and them helping us design this. I also think, just kind of lastly, I think it's important to note that we're I think we're in a teacher crisis. Obviously, Chris could probably talk to that more than I could, but I think we've got some major concerns in regards to teacher recruitment. I think retention, I can only speak for myself, retention is not as much of our issue. It's more about recruiting great teachers and getting them here. And, you know, I think what better thing to do than to keep building great programs that excite teachers to want to come to your school and be a part of our district and our school. And so this is just another great example of that. So on that note, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Corey.
Hey there, I'll just give you a quick little history about where we've been and kind of where I've been in this whole process. And I come from the world of industry. I was a toy designer for many, many years, and I was in charge of R&D at Motorola for many years, and I worked in the advanced technology group at Apple. So I kind of came to teaching, and I always wanted to teach, but never felt I could afford to until my kids got through college, and now they're through college, and so now I can actually afford to do this. And so and so I just want to give you a little background where we started. So I started just a toy design program. It was just because I was been a toy designer for 20 years. I thought it'd be fun for kids to make something that they thought would be fun. I figured they were close enough, you know, to using toys that they'd want to design them. So it evolved from a toy design program to a product design program, which is kind of much more general. And so the shop became the Marin Design Center. So we kind of created this place where we can use big tools and bring back all the old tools. Every bit of a gear in that shop now works. We have, you know, lathes and drill presses, all the traditional tools. But now we have laser cutters, like an industrial laser cutter, and we've got 3D printers, four 3D printers. We've got electronics, we've got software, each kid has their own computer. It's a pretty cool space now. So we actually can really make some pretty amazing things. And in the course of doing that, we said, well, it'd be really nice if we can actually, for those kids who are really interested in doing things with their hands, why not learn physics with their hands? So that kind of led to this thing called the Physics of Making Things. Physics of Making Things was just certified a UCD course, so a UC laboratory physical science class, where you can actually make things, and you learn by doing, and you learn by making. You learn about physics by actually making. You make musical instruments, you make Calder sculptures, you make sound, there's a lot, pictures, all kinds of fun stuff, but it's all based on good physics, which led to this year, we're taking the MSA product design class, which was oversubscribed. We had to turn away half the kids who applied to the program, and which is a bummer, which feels really bad. But we're now prototyping it. It says, so what the intention of that class now is, it says each kid has their own project. So I call it mass customization. Every kid gets a specific kind of education, but it's really custom designed for each student. So that way we'd be in a position where you can actually do something you really cared about, what you were talking about. You know, find something you're truly excited about, and there's a person there who's going to work with you to kind of help you get excited. Specific example is there's this student, her name's Kai, and you think, feedback. Is that just air conditioning? And so what Kai is, she's a clothing designer, and you think, okay, we're just going to teach her how to sew. No, we don't teach her how to sew. What we do is she came to me, she said, I'd like to design a costume. I'm really interested in steampunk. So what we did was said, okay, for number one, research exaggeration. So your first job is to study exaggeration. She had to design a website. She looked for it in political cartoons. She looked for it in, Thomas Nass, all this great stuff, and in magazines and in clothing, and she built a portfolio all around this idea of what's exaggeration mean. When she did that, then she started doing something called croquis, which is a way of quickly drawing sketches for clothing design. And she had to kind of make pants. She specifically chose pants because she realized that, you know, in order to sell pants, you exaggerate the length of the person's legs to make the pants look appealing. So she kind of integrated that. Now, finally, she's going back, and now she's learning how to design this costume. This was all started last year to get to the point where she can actually make a costume that she can wear to Halloween based on exaggeration. So it's an integrated process for doing something that's specifically custom designed for her, right? And then each kid gets it. And last one, and then we go. Now we're going to do this thing try to do the same thing at Novato High School. What happens if you take 100 students and make it so that each kid's focused on something that they really care about, but still meets all the UC requirements for education? So they still get science, and they still get math, and they still get physics. Like I was talking, see how I integrated there? She had to write. Now she's made a tool. She was our first product design student who was a clothing designer. This year we have 5 clothing designers. They can go back and look at her website and what she did to be able to show and teach kids how to design and draw croquis. I don't have to teach that. She's teaching the next generation of students. So she's creating a product that everyone uses. So that's kind of how we got to where we started, and that's it for me.
Class.
Glenn, it's never it for you. Truly. I had a great privilege of working, I started as a teacher. I taught middle school and high school. In fact, I then taught at grad school at Harvard. That's actually when I met Glenn, when I was in Boston at public television, and he helped me on a project with interactive video discs. This is going back quite a few generations of technology, but not the same, no generations of excitement. And in fact, we are still in that same kind of generation of excitement, but it takes a special individual and it takes a special perspective to really be able to unearth what's going on. What's lucky is that the special individuals, as more research we've been doing, are actually here. Jim Hogaboom is somebody recognized by many people that I've talked to who are the experts in project-based learning across the U.S. As someone who's actually been there, done that, literally in his own career, but also having that support is really huge. Matt has been an inspiration and a real carrier of the water, actually making sure that his program, his teachers can actually confront this. And of course, Glenn has been a huge inspiration for the school, for the teachers, but also the students and the parents. And that's very exciting. So no bells initiative, no bells. The first problem we're confronting kids with is if you don't have bells to start and stop your learning, when does it start and stop? What does it mean? How do you construct your own learning? And really that whole swing around so that it is student-led, student passion-driven is really what project-based learning is about. Project-based learning is not brand new. It's really been around robustly for the last 20 years. 3 different companies that are called project-based learning companies are having their literally 20th anniversaries this year. Many of them actually here in Marin, because the New Tech High and Buck Institute have both been in business for about 20 years. And many of the projects were actually started with some original grants out of the Autodesk Foundation. We're looking to retrace some of those steps, but actually take advantage of all the work that's been done. There are well over 500 schools in the United States that are wall-to-wall, exclusively project-based learning. They're not going to be the same as ours. Ours is going to be uniquely Novato, uniquely MSA influenced, uniquely Novato High School, and an admixture of a lot of the best practices. But we need to go and see. Project-based learning, rigorous, agile, and by agile I'll talk for a second about that. We mean a process, which is an iterative process of constant improvement, and ours, uniquely Novato, but also ours, the student voice and choice, truly their own program. The program is derived from research and will be centered in research. We are actively conspiring with researchers. They are driving what we're doing. They're showing us what they're doing. They're sharing it, and they want to look at our program. As Matt said, we haven't even launched it, and they want to come visit the program. So, in fact, what they're going to see is the Marin Design Center from Glenn's work. Let me play a very short clip just to give you a sense of the kind of challenge that the teachers are facing, but also how strongly this resonates.
When you actually open up an exploration of a subject area in a very open-ended, sort of problem-based way, where you're asking everyone to make meaning of this and dig deeply and to think, those folks, as they begin to explore, are going to ask incredible questions of you, and they're going to push your own thinking, and they're going to expand the way that you're viewing it, and they're probably going to come up with things that you haven't even thought of before.
And so now I feel like I'm actually, like as a science teacher, helping students learn how to think and act like scientists. Whereas before, as a science teacher, I was helping them memorize, certain equations and certain facts and figures.
The projects help you apply all the material that you've learned and really help you finalize your understandings to a point where either you can say, man, I've learned as much as I possibly could, or I even want to learn more on my own.
We got to research an injustice in the world and then describe it and then create a civic action based on that injustice.
It's really cool how everyone has different ideas and they'll all come together and form an even stronger and bigger idea, which sometimes you'll have never even considered originally.
This is where the real community comes in, because the way people want to learn, what works for them, what engages them, is learning with other human beings.
I help students learn how to write really well. I help students learn how to ask a really good experimental question. I help students learn how to give a great presentation.
Students are kind of presented with a real-world issue that's extremely relevant to where we are, and because it's about e-waste. We ask students, you're going to create an experiment that is meant to test out, is there a solution? And then you're going to make a recommendation. Companies like Google, and now they're actually coming up with a useful research question that's relevant to that particular topic.
And it wasn't, okay, class, we're going to make a plant today. You know, we learned about it, we learned about plants, we learned how they grow.
I think that's really annoying, so would you say we skip that?
So, sorry about the feedback. The point of the video really is that there are teachers who are working in teams with students to use project-based learning as their entire education experience. And they're bringing not just physics, which is often what a physics of making things or a design project seems like, or science, or math, but in fact, English language arts, history, all the subjects, in fact, the entire A through G sequence of learning that we're so dedicated to finding out. In fact, rigorous is one of the things that people are really most concerned about, and in fact, one of the things that we're watching most closely. The Lucas Education Research Foundation is conducting right now. They've given us an early copy of their study on rigor in project-based learning, and we're applying virtually all of those findings. This will be a college preparatory, career preparatory program, and as each student crafts their own pathway, they will need to plan for the right process that they can follow in order to accomplish all of those skills and accomplish all the competencies in order to get into college or to get into the right kind of career. It's characterized by authentic assessment and especially by the idea of the presentation, the exhibition of their knowledge. But it will be a core part of the high school. And in fact, will not pull kids away from the high school, but in fact, they'll look at the high school in a different way. Agile is a software development term. For many years, software was developed in huge Gantt charts, much like a building, with very solid project delivery deadlines, and that stretched over months or years. Now it's not done that way anymore. It's done in 2-week sprints. It's done in 2-week iterations that will allow people to redesign the process of their product almost every 2 weeks. A lot of education needs to be done the same way. All of the studies that we're finding, all the places where we're able to watch this have been producing outstanding results. This will be one of the characteristics of the Nobel's initiative. We're very excited about that. And of course, ours, really and truly focused on students, driven by students, but it needs to be led and guided by faculty. The faculty need time to work with each other, and they need time to work with individual students to do this really radical form of personalization that is at the heart of project-based learning. And of course, the parents are not an ancillary part of this. They amplify, they support this, and in fact, they are the beginning, the first layer of the level of expertise that goes beyond teachers that kids will reach to as they investigate experiences. We're also putting together what I think is going to be an outstanding advisory board. We've gotten preliminary assent from everybody on this list: Google, the Paul Allen Family Foundation. There we are lucky to have a ringer, because I think you know that Glenn has been recognized by the Paul Allen Foundation. The George Lucas Education Foundation and its education research arm, Salesforce, Buck Institute, Big Picture Learning, High Tech High, New Tech High, Summit Public Schools on the peninsula, and actually a new school that's just been recognized by XQ over in Oakland. And that's a very exciting place. One of the reasons why we're so excited about it is that of the schools that we are most excited about. Many of them are local. The first one likely is going to be in Sacramento, a big picture school in Sacramento, and also the summit programs on the peninsula. But we also are looking at New Tech High and some programs up in Washington State and one down in San Diego called High Tech High. We'll be taking a couple of design meetings with this design team of teachers and creating a full plan and then writing a business plan along with that and bringing that back to you for the January meeting. So that's where the project is. That's after we get your approval, we'll be able to roll that out to parents, enroll the program, and spend the spring designing the first months of the program intensively with the team that will be the program team in order to open school next August. So that's the overall sort of trajectory of the plan. We are extremely excited about it. I've been incredibly impressed by the reaction of so many people that we've talked to, by the caliber and the interest of the level of faculty at Novato, and the interest that Glenn is really, I think, deserves an enormous amount of credit for inciting. But I want to make one point about that, and that is, as much as I revere Glenn's perspective and his incredible ability, this is not really Glenn Corey Academy. This is truly the Nobels initiative that will stretch beyond the subjects that he's taught and deploy certainly many of the things that he's been talking about, but it will bring in an entirely new cadre and I believe attract generations of outstanding teachers to Novato as well. There's a lot that we've been sort of racing over, and I want to give the microphone back to Glenn, but basically we were trying to do this.
Go back to that slide. That was exactly what I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the big logo. Okay, next slide, just for Q&A. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to point out this logo. What I really like about this is one of the things we have said, Google's kind of adopted us. There's Richard O'Shea, who's from Google, really is very excited. He actually came out and trained how many of our teachers in maybe 15 teachers in Google Classroom. And he walked away and said he's very excited about what we're doing. He really wants to work with us. Enough so he actually Google made a logo for us. So that logo comes from Google. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of make it look so it's kind of like the wheels are beginning, the gears are starting to turn, and the Nobel's initiative. And the one other thing is any student that would graduate from our program would be a Nobel laureate. So it's kind of a joke at the beginning, but this idea saying that there's Nobels and there are no grades. It's all portfolio based. What you're doing is it's a collection. Imagine 4 years of your work, and we can actually capture the growth that you've done in the course of 4 years, and people will be able to look at that work and your output.
Exactly what it is.
So that's what we're trying to. That's kind of our big focus. And I was specifically interested in Google because I'm really interested in DeepMind. DeepMind is their kind of a machine intelligence system that will actually start being able to kind of dig deep and trying to see if we can get to the point where we really provide exactly what the student needs next. So imagine getting to the point where we actually change the teacher, so I walk up to a student and I can actually know what that student needs next and how I can provide it. That's our goal, that's our dream, right? That's gonna take some time to get to. It's not gonna be our first year. The whole dream is, imagine a world. I mean, we have these computers that are there with all this data sitting in them, and we actually use that data to do some good. So that's kind of the essence of what we're doing. So I just want to share the Google thing.
Yep. Oh, by the way, the Google thing does take one more form, and that is Glenn and I are going to go to New York City next week because Google is convening an EDU think tank on exactly this topic. Several people have flown in from.
They've taken a space, and we've got a whole day, and they've brought in people from all over the country to help us design this. So there's the two of us, and he's from NYU, who's going to be moderating it. They brought Lyron. Lyron, and also someone from the North Carolina Department of Education.
Well, and the founder of the Alt Schools.
The founder of the Alt Schools. They're bringing all these amazing people. They said, okay, here you go. Here's a bunch of people. You get a day, and they're going to work on how do you make your school really work. Pretty cool, right? Right?
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, now it's time for Q&A.
All right, guys, questions? Ross?
So, Rob, welcome. I had the opportunity to attend this jurat, and it's exciting to see this moving forward slice by slice. We've had opportunities in Novato to do programs like this before, and they've worked well for a time and then not worked well. And there's some good history to learn from each one of those because you're goal of having it be sustainable beyond Glen Corey is something that we haven't been able to achieve before. We've had great instances of success, and then we kind of didn't capture the secret sauce and understood what was working about them and make them continue. Technology's better, tools are better, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all kinds of tools that we didn't have before, so I think it's, a really good idea to do this. So, good luck, but I do have a concern that's bigger than your success. At Novato High, we have a very successful MSA program. And now, if we have a very successful NBI program, we have students who are not going to be part of either. And Oakland addressed this 15, 20 years ago, and they took their high school campuses and broke them into 4 academies. And it's well worth the study to go to Oakland and see how their public schools fared in that process, because the concern was kids would fall out of the program. And so it works great except for the 20% of the kids that didn't get to any group, and they end up without the service that they're due from a public education and a public school. So I'm concerned, and that's probably, Matt, more for you than it is for Glenn, to make sure we understand this part of the problem and think about it and come to some solution. And I don't know the answer. It's a hard question, so I'm just going to leave that, but you can speak to it, but I'm going to leave it with you, because we're not going to fix it tonight, but it's important.
That's where we're looking at best demonstrated practice. We're looking around to kind of answer, and those lots of.
High confidence in the idea that we should start relatively small in terms of being able to control, especially the number of teachers. The teachers really need to be retrained and reoriented, and they need to work quite intensively with students. So it looks like the first year or two, it looks especially important and that's what we've been told, I guess, time and again with different programs that have been successful. However, there's less evidence that it has to stop at 400 students. There's less evidence that the real size of this school is the size of a school within a school, or let's say an MSA program or something. In fact, it's possible that this is a better model for all of high school.
It could be, but I know a lot of the partners you've spoken to get great publicity out of a very shiny object that serves, 150 kids, and they hold it up and show it, and no one mentions the kids that didn't get included in that population. So
the other point I want to make is that this will be diverse by design, in the sense that it will literally take all students who say, I'm interested, unless we are oversubscribed, at which point we'll do it by lottery. But it will be representative of all of the Novato.
My concern is the kid that doesn't even think he's interested because nobody in his household has ever said, I got friends that are, I'm first generation college, but I have friends who worked in low-level agricultural positions, and somebody said, have you ever thought of going to college? And it wasn't even part of their scope. And so you've got to transform that thinking, and that's hard. The whole family's got to jump in. It's hard.
That's a school-wide issue, too. I mean, that's one of those things and it dovetails with Get Focused, Stay Focused.
It's a town-wide issue.
Is that the minute a student enters our school, or even before, we're having that conversation in the council office and saying, what is your 10-year academic plan? These are the things that we have available to you on campus. What are your interests? And it doesn't stop with Nobels for me, obviously. We're doing the health careers pathway that hopefully gets going in 2017. We're looking at a Renaissance Academy, which I'm going to recruit that kid that was out here earlier for the history, because we want a humanities pathway, a liberal arts pathway. I mean, we're going to keep trying to find a place for everybody.
You might find, the older brother might go to college, and all of a sudden the whole family goes to college. Who knows how it's going to work? But if you don't open the door and say, this could be for you, then nothing ever happens. So,
all right, so we got a couple more questions. Trustee Aguila, then Trustee Mack.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to approve the planning agreement between Rob Lippincott, NBI Consulting Design Led, and the Novato Unified School District to continue the planning process and to bring a full proposal for the No Bells initiative back for that final approval in January.
Appreciate that. It's direct to the point. All right, so I have a first, I have a second. So So I will,
We have some
second, and now we have an opportunity to still discuss the question. Is there any comments on the question? You do have a
if I
comment.
may.
Okay, so we have Trustee Mack and then Trustee Scott.
So, thanks, guys. Great progress. As I was in the first charrette and I really enjoyed it. Want to participate however I can, so feel free to pull me in. I will be a willing victim. Please, let's get PR on this. This is what attracts people to our district and keeps them from going elsewhere. They see the innovation. They see that we're a leader. This is what drives this district. Getting down to brass tacks, and I brought this up, PE requirement, foreign language. We need to work that out. And I see a lot of nodding, and let's do it. I just don't know how. Those are the kind of weird ones I don't know how to solve. The other thing is this going to be an extra district kind of thing, just like MSA, where we draw kids in from outside the district, just like MSA, and STEM for that matter? Or don't know yet. TBD, maybe early just within district and then expand, whatever.
I guess I have some ideas, but I don't think we're all.
Okay, if you're not there, those are some of the things I'm looking at.
Yep.
I think all of those things need to be part of the design process and be reported back to you in January.
Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. And then two last things, I'm sorry. English learners. Ross touched on it from an opportunity perspective, but we addressed this in the charrette. There are some great speakers in there on how to do it. We really need to continue focusing on that. We need to make sure that this is not a vehicle for expanding the achievement gap, right? It's actually a vehicle for closing it. So whatever we can do to make sure we get the ELs involved, however we do it. It sounds like it's going to be a focus, but let's focus on that. Last but not least, I think with the bond, this really speaks to campus design, facility design. I don't know if we need a separate something. I don't know, but we really have to take a long, hard look at not necessarily trying to shoehorn this into the existing rectangular spaces we have. And maybe what if it was drawn on a clean piece of paper, what would it look like, and how different is that than what we have now? And should we bridge that gap or not? That would help us to decide what to do with the bond money. So, knock on wood.
Good, all right.
Thank you.
Trustee Scott, then Trustee Cooper.
Are you reading my mind tonight? I was going to ask also in terms of equity, EL, what were our plans for that? I'm curious about capacity, what you're trying to do in terms of growth. Is it only going to be at Novato High, or are we going to expand this at some point to San Marin? I just want to make sure that all students get an opportunity to do this. I'm very excited. I think it's fabulous. But again, as Ross touched on, and Greg, I have a concern about some folks being left out and not included.
I'll just say it. My goal is I want to take over the high school. I think it's the intention is, and I even have this thought that imagine for those parents who kind of went.
Both high schools.
Well, I would say for those parents who are kind of nervous about
and Marin Oaks.
I don't quite get it.
And Nova.
I totally agree.
All of it.
And I even think
Full
we're
package.
leaving out special education. I
Yes.
think that there are a lot of kids that actually, if they got a chance to actually make something with their hand, they can have a deep learning experience on something that really meets them where they are, rather than saying, okay, well, you don't quite get it. Can I just share one quick story? And it's this
Sure.
one student, and he won't make eye contact with you. When you talk to him, he talks like this a little bit, and he just like this, and he won't look at you. And I just happened to notice he was tearing apart an iPad and put it back together successfully. I don't know if you know how hard that is, but it is a very challenging task to do. And I had these two 3D printers that Matt was nice enough to buy for me that embarrassingly I couldn't figure out how to make work. So I went to Nolan, and I said, oops, shouldn't say who it was, sorry. And I said, hey, tell you what, you make this thing work, you get an A in the class. And let me tell you, he's read every manual, and he went through, and he made both of those things work. Now he's exploring three-dimensional fractals in these amazing high-resolution 3D printers. And from the Fullerton Foundation, a woman from the Fullerton Foundation came by to see how their money from MSA was being spent, and since we got some of the money. And I introduced her to this kid. And he says, hello, and he wouldn't make eye contact with her. And then she said, what are you doing? He went, it runs at 410 nanometers, and this is 420 nanometers, and it turns out this was, and she goes, how about that? Well, that's $110 per pint, and he's like, it's like going and going and going. And then when he's done, he goes back to when he's done. And she walked out, honestly, in tears, and said, That's where we want our money to go. And she says, ask for more money. And so they were going to originally give us 35,000. We said, okay, how about 40? She says, more. And we said, okay, 50. She says, okay, $50,000 with a stipulation. Every penny of it needs to go to the project design program. Because she said, that's what we want to see. And that's it. And this is a kid who's got D's and F's in every one of his classes.
I think that's important to note, too. This is a kid who's
That
struggling
is,
in
we're looking to
English.
lift
Right.
the
He's
money.
struggling
in English, but he's read manuals. I don't know
Technical
about you.
manuals are the highest Lexile level.
Right.
And he's struggling in English, but he can recite a technical manual. I mean,
I just
that
got
tells
him.
you
I
So
just
what-
bought
so
him-
what
I just
is the
bought him a
capacity?
5-axis CNC, and he's got it running. It took him 2 days, and he went through the entire. Now he knows how to do this stuff, and he's good at it. And all the other kids, honestly, step back and see what he's going to do with it. It's amazing.
All right,
Wow.
we
That
got,
makes me feel
He would have
great.
been lost.
So capacity,
follow-up?
how many kids are we serving
For the first year or eventually?
for the first year and like maybe say 5 years out?
Go ahead.
First year, 100 kids, and the plan at this point, and again, we haven't decided this, but this is what we're laying out there, is what we're thinking. We would grow it by 100 every year.
100 every year. Okay.
The-
Thank
the
you.
school. In
I
other
was
words,
just
it's
trying to
ninth
get the
graders,
growth
400 ninth
projection.
graders, 400 10th graders, and so forth.
Well,
Okay.
Trustee Mack has said we can design our own school, so we can expand that a little more down the road.
And I want to come play.
all right,
That's another thing we want to do at this school. Imagine a school that says.
I have the
"Carol,
dubious task of moving this meeting along.
Sorry.
It's not that I lack enthusiasm or support. I do have a question coming from Trustee Cooper, and then I'd like to call the question to vote.
It's more of a comment than anything, and I know I agree with most everything that's been said tonight, and you know my enthusiasm about your program. I think we're running the risk, though, of turning that school in this district from good to great.
Sorry. That seems like a problem.
All right, so gentlemen, if you don't mind, trustees, we have a first by Trustee Aguila, seconded by Trustee Mack. All those in the affirmative. We have 6 in favor and 1 absent, so congratulations, and we look forward to your updates. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Superintendent, thank you very much.
So if you thought that was exciting, wait till you hear the unaudited actual financial report for 2015-16, brought to you by, I apologize, the well-respected Karen Maloney, Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations.
Thank you for that fabulous introduction. And it is exciting. This is the most exciting report of the year, the financial report that says not what are we going to spend and what's the budget and what do we think we're going to get in revenue, but what we did spend. And such a quiet room now. So anyway, our superintendent certainly encourages us to provide you the information in a very high level. We know that you get the information in the packet, and we're always available to answer any questions. So you will have 7 slides tonight, and we'll be over pretty quickly. I'm here to answer questions, but before I do that, Nancy Walker spends so many hours on this and her team. And so the length of this presentation, no way can show the amount of dedication and professionalism that goes into closing the book. So I just want to acknowledge Nancy. She does an amazing job. So I know this is small, and it's meant to be because it's not that I really want you to read all of those pages. This is the unrestricted general fund. And so what I want to point out is from the estimated actuals, that's the information that was presented when you adopted the current year budget, and then how we closed it. That we looked at it, and as we're getting close to the end of the year, that we thought that we would have a net increase in this fund, the unrestricted, of 1.2 million, and that we actually, so I should have my glasses, and it was actually 1.3. So that's a change of 132,000. So that, I have to say, is pretty remarkable. And so as we reported out the information, that it did not change that much from when we developed the budget. But just as highlighting it, The biggest thing that happened this year, certainly the biggest impact to the budget. So for the 15-16 year, settled in June of 15th, was a 6% salary increase, 2% off. Not to say that in the current year that was settled during the year under review was a 5% for NFT, 2% off, and still negotiating with CSEA. But for the district over a 2-year period, that's an 11% ongoing. The year before that was a 3%, and then 4% off. And so that's something we should all be very proud of, especially with the teacher shortage. Also, that when we look at that, the budget, that there was a net saving of about $50,000. Again, this is quite remarkable that our Director of Fiscal Service can come that close and keep such an eye on position control, which really is the inventory. Our people is what this organization is about, and to constantly review that and work with all the departments. The part that's the story, other than the salary increases that the board authorized, is our carryover. And so when we look at this and say, when we thought we were going to close with a surplus, and our surplus is significantly higher, as you'll see on the next page, it has to do with our carryovers. And for the last 2 to 3 years that I've stood before you, we've talked about the carryover. And so those are dollars that are budgeted but then aren't spent. When we look at the books and supplies, there is net budget savings of $578,399, and then net budget savings of $196,000 in the unrestricted. And so those are dollars that were available that we did not spend, but are carried over into the current year. Also, the board was very prudent. They authorized a transfer of $1 million to Fund 17 because of the increasing cost in PERS and STIRS, and looking at that in the future. So that's the story for the unrestricted general fund. The restricted fund is the money that we get from grants, from federal dollars, state dollars that are restricted. We have to spend as designated, and if we don't spend them, those get carried over to the next year. The quirky thing in this is what's known as GASB 86, and where we've now had to start recording in our books the pension liability related to STIRS and PERS. They provide us information. We book it here as a revenue, and then we book it as an expenditure, so it distorts our working budget. That adjustment was $505,000. And you'll see that both in the revenues, and then you'll see it down in the benefits. But the story for this, again, is in the books and supplies. The net budget savings was $722,000, and the service and operational expenses had a net savings of $740,169, mostly in the area of special ed. A difficult thing for us to budget each year is our non-public agency non-public school and NPA, the agency costs. We work closely with special ed and looking at that. It's something that goes up and down throughout the year, but it is something that we continue to try and better estimating what that cost is. So there was savings in there. So with that, the ending fund balance for the unrestricted, from what we thought it would be, that actually was a change of $1.8 million, and that's for the carryovers in the restricted. So when we look at that together, that we really thought that we would have a net increase in our combined of $264,624. We actually end the year with a net increase of $2.2 million. The majority of that is in the unrestricted, in the restricted with the carryovers, but also in the unrestricted general fund. So with that, our ending fund balance is, as a percentage of expenditures, is 20.7%. And I do have a goal of getting to 15%. And when we look at this, the district is very well positioned for the coming years. The LCFF is almost fully funded, and so we know that our increases in revenues is going to be very slim in the out year. We also know that Prop 30 is expiring, or parts of it. Prop 55 is one of the many, many propositions that are on the ballot, which replaces Prop 30. Will that pass or not pass? And then the STRS and PERS increase. But when you look at where we're at with our ending fund balance, we're very well positioned as we move into the next couple years, where the increase in revenue will not be as significant as we've seen before. I just like to remind people, though, that that increase in revenue really is just bringing it up to the balance of the 07-08 year with COLA. So it is an increase, but that's only because of the significant cuts that we had during the recession. So with that, I'll take any questions. I did want to go over the other funds, but before I do that, take any questions that you have on the general fund.
Trustee Moore.
The correlation between the Great Recession and the fact that teacher income was flat, and now we've been able to make up for lost years, but we're still seeing measurable teacher shortages, which is just is that, you think it's a consequence of the compensation they can earn in the profession? Maybe that's a Chris
certainly
question.
our assistant soup of HR can speak to that, but what we know for a teacher shortage is really a combination of many things. During the Great Recession, when school districts were laying off tens of thousands throughout the state of teachers, as a young person, they were not encouraged to go into the teaching profession. And so now you're seeing the result of that. Now we have funding again. It's not so much that the enrollment of our schools is up, that we're being able to bring class sizes down throughout the state. We're expanding services to our kids, our EL kids, our kids of poverty, which is providing supplemental services, smaller class size, and now a great need for teachers, and certainly in specialized areas, be it special ed, math and science, that area. But I do, as we talked when we did negotiations over the last several years, knowing the teacher shortage was coming, that the district did take a bold move and give significant increases, and really as a percentage during those 2 years, probably the highest in Marin County, even though we're the lowest funded. So trying to counter some of that effect, I think, has been very beneficial to us in being able to attract teachers and the health benefits that you changed about 3 years ago. So those things, and being very proactive, I think has helped us, even though it's still a challenge.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
With that, we do have...
We have a question from Trustee Mack, and then I think Trustee Cooper's got a... Yeah, okay, Trustee Mack.
Just quick comment. I want to say thank you for taking all of the carryover funds and putting them in one place. I think that makes a lot of sense. They were kind of we were losing track of them all. And now we have a focus on it. But let's continue that. Let's continue focusing on that and finding a way to use those resources that they're just sitting there.
Right, and I appreciate you bringing that up, is that we had track of it. It's just the allocation of resources that under our superintendent really brought the goals forward, helped the whole staff, being principals, teachers, through the different committees, really focus and say, what are your priorities? And once those priorities were identified, then we in the business could say, let us put the mechanism together to fund those priorities. And so we saw those carryovers at the site levels and department. We said, we will fund your priorities, be it community liaisons at each site, but we need to do that through a reorganization of the allocation, bringing it back to central office and then, but continuing to say, what is the priority, let us fund it. So I do think a year from now that those carryovers will not be as great, but the priorities of the district will still be met. So it is a reallocation, and a lot of work, but I think that we're getting to where we want to be. Another question on the general fund?
Nope. Oh, we do. Trustee Scott, go ahead.
Just a comment, just the fund balance percentage, the 20.7 seems pretty healthy.
As I like to say, we're well positioned, that we are going into some unknown waters. And so we're still, have some declining enrollment, but it really is looking at the proposition. And when you look at what will happen when 30 expires and if the other one, 55, isn't passed, but also looking at that increase where COLAs are about projected to be 1.1% and slightly over 2% in the 2 years out, that the cost of PERS and STIRS, the increase is more than what we believe the revenue increase will be. And that's in the budget, and so in the multi-years that was presented at the budget, you'll see that we're deficit spending. So it is good for us to have the fund balance, because the next 3 years, including this year, are projected to be deficit spending, which will bring down that ending fund balance. So we're looking at the actuals, and so the budget as presented did show deficit spending at the 45-day revision.
Okay, question from Trustee Aguirre.
I just wanted to say that you should be very proud leaving the district and leaving us with these numbers.
I am.
And so the new person is coming into a nice and healthy, like you said, well-positioned district. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And if I may, in the next 2-page, I think is really what you should be proud of. And so with this, we have the other funds, and that what we just want to point out in the facility funds, as we all well know, we don't receive any specific dollars for facilities. So this is where our money sits to do any type of improvement. When we look at deferred maintenance, we do transfer funds in there from the general fund. And right now we have a balance of 1.2 million. When I looked at being able to do the San Ramon roofs before the bond passage, because I do believe it will pass, that deferred maintenance fund was not enough to replace the roof at San Ramon. So that puts it in perspective. So there are dollars there, and $1.2 million seems like a lot, but when you look at one project, it can wipe that out. The building fund is leftover dollars from leveraging our prior bond and looking at state dollars, interest earned. And so it does show an ending fund balance of 3.3 million. But those are those dollars are allocated for ongoing projects. And so really what you have available that isn't already tagged is $1.1 million. And so again, if we wanted to do roofs or anything, there isn't a lot of available dollars. And really, school districts now, the only source for funding is through a general obligation bond. We have no ability to work with the local authorities under redevelopment or any other way, and the state program is also has no money, and that's why there's a bond on it for the state. Capital facilities is our developer fees. There isn't a lot of growth in Marin, nor is there in Novato. We have $248,000. It pays for portables. It pays for some additional furniture. Again, that's not a very significant balance. And then the last one, Fund 40, is for Hamilton, and those dollars are for anything that occurs in that area. So with that, I will take questions, but again, I think the very last page is the key page.
I figured it out now. It took me a while.
So, do you want to talk facility funds?
I would just, I had in my mind, I kept remembering there was something from the state that was gonna impact us significantly. And I kept remembering it was PERS and STIRS, and I see that the transfer into 17, I figured it out. I found
There
it.
you go.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
So I read this over the weekend, which I tend to do when I'm wiped out and I need to catch up, get ready for the meeting. But on the attachment that we sent out, it's a different format. It's like the written report, the 199-page report, but you have the nice summary up at the front, which is really all I read. But that's about 10 pages. On page 6, it has this unassigned $3 million. And I'm not sure where that fits into all this. It's basically components of the ending fund balance. So the 16.9 ending fund balance, and it's broken out into cash, stores.
oh, I know what you're speaking
And
of.
then there's assigned, and then there's
Right,
just
and-
unassigned.
And so we're required under governmental accounting standards to cut up the ending fund balance and say what it's for. So what you're asking, or your question is the unassigned ending fund balance. So when you look at the ending fund balance for the combined, and in this presentation here, that what we look at is that we have at the end of last year, 16,909,477. And so on that page there, it says out of that 16, almost 17 million, all that money is designated for something. So a lot of it's designated for those restricted dollars. We're giving dollars for a specific purpose. If we don't spend it in that way, then we can't spend it for a new roof. We can't spend it on
Categoricals.
teacher salaries. It has to be spent for the purpose that it was given.
Right.
Also, we have a requirement by the state to maintain 3%. And then we go through it and we say, okay, what else is this ending fund balance for? Some of the things that are listed on that page is declining enrollment, because we know that we're still in declining enrollment, and one of the important things of a fund balance is to level things off. So if we had a dip in ending fund in declining enrollment more than what we expected, we can't lay the teachers off. They're under contract. That ending fund balance would pay for us to get through the next year when we can lay teachers off or enrollment comes back up. So there's a list there on the page there. The undesignated says at the end of the day that, yes, we have 16, almost $17 million, but it's not really designated for anything. And so that's back to the goal of the board is to get to 15%. So looking at
Or the
that.
5%.
And some of the things that we spent it on certainly is the 2% off the salary. That's coming from your ending fund balance. It's a one-time payment. Those are things, over the last 2 years, we've spent $1 million each year in network upgrades. That would be a good use of ending fund balance. Investments, as you saw earlier, it was a budget of $30,000. We're going to try and use designated dollars for career technology, but saying we have ending fund balance that to invest in looking at the Nobel's initiative is a one-time expenditure. That's an investment. So when you look at ending fund balance, you say, how can we use this dollars as an investment? And so, but it's a long answer to your question.
I
It
get
just
it, though.
says that we're working towards 15%. It's not designated for anything, be it a restricted.
So if I could
or-
restate that $3 million is there for us to potentially put into a program like Nobel's or whatever else. But and also at the same time, it kind of represents the gap, the overage, if you will, in reserves we have over 15%.
Yeah.
Because we're at
and
20.
That's close. And so I will always say, ending fund balance, you can only spend it once.
Yeah, it's 1X, I get that. And I know you're talking about the various facilities funds, and one of them that caught my attention was Fund 14, and how, to your point, if the bond doesn't go through, which it does go through, But with that fund needs to be pretty serious, especially if one whole roof goes out and that whole fund's gone.
And you've
And-
had some trustees on this board for a while that could speak to that, that really the only other mechanism or vehicle for funding anything like that in a facility, if it wasn't covered by insurance, would either be using the general fund, that ending fund balance that you spoke about.
Right.
Or
1X.
taking out other debt, which is called certificates of participation,
No, thank you.
which is like a credit card, and it's funded by that general fund. So there really are not very many options.
So what I would put out there, float out there for all of us to just maybe think about, maybe not tonight, but maybe to consider, you know, how we did set aside some money for stirs and PERS uncertainties. Perhaps we look at setting aside some of that 3 million into Fund 14 to make it a more robust fund for uncertainties on the facility side. Just something to think about. I'll defer it to the president and the agenda planners.
Why don't you ask when that would be the best, when's the best time to talk about that? Well, I mean, it's part of the budget process. These we're looking at unaudited actuals at this point, but when
putting
we
it out
start to
there.
build
Yeah.
the budget.
It's
Okay.
just a concept for us to consider.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Scott, you're done? All right. We're good on this? Then if everyone is okay, I will call for a motion. Seconded by Trustee Scott. All those in favor of accepting the recommendation on the unaudited actuals, all those in the affirmative, we have 6-4 and 1 absent. All right, thank you very much. So we will move on to our, we still have a GAN limit resolution we got to do. So next is 14C, which is adopt resolution number and the GAN limit. So everyone, you have this resolution before you. Do I have a second? With the first and the second by Trustee Aguila. I will then go defer to the Assistant Superintendent. Was there anything you would like to add in regard to the GAN limit resolution?
I recommend that you approve it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that recommendation. So having that been said, all those in favor will vote in the affirmative. 6 are for it and 1 absent. So that takes care of passage of the GAN limit resolution, leaving us with the consent item M. Trustee Aguila pulled this item. She had a question in regards to this gift. So Trustee Aguila?
Yes, it's just very, just curious about who the gift was from. It wasn't very clear. Is it San Marin's
Unless
speech?
anonymous, do we have that information available?
I did go back and look, so thank you for the question. But however, in the access that I had to the records, that what it appears to be is a donation by various people. So when you have a donation that is more than one, then we don't list it all out. And maybe it's a recommendation that you want to bring forth to list all names out. But it was a donation by the debate club, and it funded a professional expert. But there wasn't one name in particular on the deposit slip.
Okay, thank you.
So upon recognizing the contribution that was made by that group of individuals, we'll assume, would go ahead and make a motion to accept.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the debate team. So I'd like to make a motion to approve it and include it in the consent item.
Okay, so I'll take a second from Trustee Scott, and all those in favor of passing item M on the consent agenda item. I have 6 in the affirmative, 0 and 1 absent, so that concludes our last item on tonight's agenda, so we are hereby adjourned.